What up, everybody? Good morning and happy Wednesday. Making the turn here on the Dan Kasper Show. Appreciate you tuning in, however, wherever you may be tuning in on this January 4th. Radio dials, you got a couple of those 105.1 FM, 790 AM, also available online, sportstalk1051.com. Got the app, got your Google and Alexa home devices, and of course the video stream that's up on Twitter, YouTube, and on Facebook. But happy Wednesday, everybody, and be a little careful out there on the roads. Just maybe some slick spots out there. We do have some delays so far here this morning that affect our immediate area right now. You can go to our website, sportstalk1051.com, for the latest school closings and delays. Brought to you by Hovland's and Service Master. I'll just get to this right now. We got Alma Center, Humber, Maryland School District. You're opening late. Alma School District is closed Wednesday, but it's an e-learning day. Amory School District is closed. Baldwin Woodville is closed. Black River Falls opening late. Bruce, virtual learning today. Chippewa Falls opening late. So a 2-hour delay for Chippewa Falls and McDonald as well this morning. Clayton closed. Colfax delayed 2 hours. Durand, Arkansas closed. Elk Mound is opening late 2 hours. We got Elmwood, virtual learning Wednesday. I'm kind of glad that back in my day we did have virtual learning because it kind of put a damper on snow days. I'll just say that right now. Flambeau delayed 2 hours. Gilmanton opening late. Glenwood City closed. We got Luck is closed, but it is a virtual learning day. Menominee delayed for 2 hours. Pepin closed. Plum City closed, and River Falls is closed. Prairie Farm closed as well. Spring Valley closed too. So stay up to date on all the latest school closings and delays at our website, sportstalk1051.com. All right, what do we got on the game plan for this morning? Bucks, they got the win last night against the Wizards behind a career night for the Greek Freak. Giannis dropping a career high in points, 55 points. It was 123 to 113 as the Bucks kind of avenged their loss against the Wizards on Sunday. We did see, so Giannis returned. We had Drew Holiday playing a limited role. He actually came off the bench. Only played 19 minutes. He's been dealing with some non-COVID illness, but 2 of 8 from the field for just 6 points there. But Brook Lopez helping out the Greek Freak with 21 points. And then Bobby Portis coming off the bench and contributing 17 points. Giannis, though, after the game, and this I kind of want to talk about. I'll have a little fun with this, but we know Giannis is good for a good quote once in a while, right? He's good with that. But after putting up 55 points and 10 rebounds and 7 assists, and he's been off to a fantastic. I mean, this stretch that he is on right now, he's collected at least 40 points, 10 rebounds, and 5 assists in each of the past 3 games he's played. The only other players in NBA history to have 3 straight performances of 40, 10, and 5 are Elgin Baylor in 1961 and 63, Wilt Chamberlain in 1963, and Russell Westbrook in 2016. The only other Bucks players to score at least 40 points in 3 straight appearances, only a couple. Flynn Robinson in 69 and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar in 72. That's it. That's the kind of stretch run that Giannis is on right now. But after the game, Giannis said, I want to get in a position that my game is boring. I just do what I do, and people don't talk about it because it becomes boring. I do it every single night. That's what I want to do. I want other people to feel like my game is boring, but I don't get bored. The greats, the best players, never get bored. They go out there, and they always give their best any given night. And that's something I know that we've kind of, talked about. It's like whenever Giannis goes out there and Giannis does his thing and has another spectacular night, it's kind of at that point now where it's like you shrug your shoulders a little bit. It's like, yeah, maybe it's to come. It's to be expected, right? It's to be expected at this point. That's where I think he's kind of coming at, where he's like talking about boring. It's like it's boring. It's because it's just to be expected now at this point. Where we open up every morning, he's like, yeah, Buck's got to win. And yep, Giannis dropped 40 or 35 points, 10 rebounds, and 5 assists. That's a normal game for Giannis at this point. And, some people, and I know we've touched on this in the past and that, but, I feel like at certain points, and I get what Giannis is saying, but like, okay, he wants to see his game being boring, where that's to be expected, but at the same time, that means some fans maybe take the careers for granted a little bit, or just have these super high expectations. I feel like, Aaron Rodgers is in that category, especially at his peak or the last few years. It's like he set the bar so darn high that when it's a little bit below or maybe at that line, it's like, what the heck's wrong with him? It's at the point now, if Giannis goes out there and, maybe for a stretch run, he only scores 20 points or something like that, people are going to be like, what's wrong with Giannis? You know what I mean? So I want to talk a little bit about that. But, like, who is – and I'm trying to come up with the best way to maybe phrase this. But, like, who was a player that, maybe when you were growing up or maybe now that you would put in that boring category? They're great, but they're boring. And like, for example, like, I don't know if I would put a guy like Favre in that category because he was so unpredictable. You know what I mean? Like, you didn't know what he was going to do. He was great, but he screwed up a lot too. So I wouldn't put Favre like in that boring category. Great player, but not boring. You know what I mean? So who would you kind of put in that category where it was like, hey, they're just freaking great, but they're kind of boring too? You know what I mean? You know what I'm getting at a little bit? Like would you put Jordan in that category? I mean, you knew what to expect from Jordan, but then he would just have like these nights or these plays that were just like, and that's where I don't know if Giannis is necessarily gonna be in that type of category where he's like, yep, just a casual 35-point night. He's gonna have those few plays where it's just gonna be electric. Maybe like a Brady. You know what I mean? Like, just kind of like that boring but good. Like, maybe he doesn't have the flashiest throws or the flashiest plays, but just consistently dang good. Let's spitball that one a little bit here. So, speaking of hoops, Badgers, squeaking by last night against the Minnesota Gophers. It was maybe a little too close to call there, but nonetheless, Badgers picking up the 63-60 victory. Steve Kroll delivered 17 points for the Badgers. Chucky Hepburn helping out the cause as well with 16. But perhaps maybe the biggest thing to come out of this game is the injury to Tyler Wall. He's their top scorer, top rebounder. He apparently, Greg Gartz after the game, he stepped on somebody's foot, came down awkwardly on that ankle earlier in the game, but only played, it was about 9 minutes or so. So he never returned after that. There is no timeline on, when Tyler Wall will be back or anything like that. But, you got Illinois coming up this week. You got Michigan State. You got Indiana and such. But, you look at this game, too, last night. And, Badgers ranked 14th in the country. They've won 6 straight. But as Greg Gard mentioned a couple weeks ago, They're kind of a drama team. They make things really difficult on themselves, and these are these close, scrappy games. And that was the case again last night against Minnesota. And if you look at the last couple of games here, when you look at this Badger Hoops team, I mean, they've kind of started off slow, a little sluggish. You go back to Lehigh, and they trailed by one at half at the break there. They were out of rhythm offensively a little bit against Western Michigan. And maybe it's like, oh, they had to break, Grambling State and that little rust could be. But, against Minnesota last night, 3 turnovers in the first 6 possessions. And they started 1 for 8. And UW right now is the worst in the Big Ten at rebounds per game. Crashing the boards, and especially last night, with Tyler Wall missing time and the Badgers having to go with a little bit of a smaller lineup. Gophers took advantage of that. And with Stephen Krall's foul trouble there, too. It was a 40-24 rebounding advantage in favor of the Gophers. But what helped was Minnesota turned the ball over 20 times last night. And Badgers had that edge and points off turnovers 21-5. So how do you assess this Badgers team? They're ranked 14th in the country, but they're squeaking by these games. These heart attack games, these drama type of games. Kind of hard to assess this team a little bit. I don't know. But definitely something to kind of keep an eye on with Tyler Wall moving forward with that injury, and hopefully not too long. But again, at the same time, they probably don't want to push it. I know Greg Gard kind of mentioned that after the game, they're not going to push it and that sort of thing. So we'll hit up some Badgers talk. We're going to hit up some Packers talk here too, as Packers will be returning to practice later on today. But I want to talk about maybe perhaps the most underrated group position of this team. And I think it's the offensive line, because we go back to the beginning of the season. I mean, they were shuffling around that group quite a bit, right? Remember? Bach missing the first couple weeks. Elton Jenkins was coming back from an ACL. You had him over there, at right tackle to begin the season with. You had Royce Newman in there. You had Yash over there at left tackle. And it was just, shuffling around. Beginning part of the season, it didn't look good, right? It didn't look good. There was questions about it. There was questions whether they were going to be able to, make some moves. Where were they going to put? I mean, we came into the season thinking Elton Jenkins was the future right tackle. Just wasn't looking right. Packers made some switches, changed it up a bit. And ever since then, ever since Bakhtiari's come back and Elton Jenkins has moved over back to the left side, and you had Zach Tom logging some snaps, the rookie. Yash playing some snaps over there at right tackle, getting the starts over at right tackle. I know Zach Tom played quite a bit of the game this past weekend because Yash re-aggravated that shoulder injury that he suffered against the Dolphins. But you look at this group right now, and if you look at Pro Football Focus grades, if you're one of those that uses that as part of the tool in the toolbox, as I like to say, heading into that game against Minnesota, and Green Bay's offensive line didn't do anything to change the rankings, but they were a top 5 group. Top 5 group. They were actually ranked 4th by Pro Football Focus. And if you look at, a few weeks before that, consistently a top 5 group. And some of the highlights of this is, if we look at penalties. Heading into that game against Minnesota, Green Bay's offensive line had committed just 23 penalties. That was third best. Zach Tom, heading into that game, had allowed just 8 pressures across 247 pass blocking snaps. Pretty good ranking there. You look at David Bakhtiari and his Pro Football Focus grade out there, it's normal Bach. He's been in and out of the lineup, in and out of certain series when he first began the season. But he's got an 82.1 grade. 0 sacks allowed. 0 this year. Now, I know a lot of people are like, well, he's going to be gone next year because of that cap hit, but he's still performing at a high level. You can't deny that. So you look at this group, you look at this offensive line group, and we talk about maybe some of the improvement in the last few weeks here defensively. Christian Watson has come on since that Dallas game. But I also think one part of this thing has been the offensive line group settling down, settling into their own. We talk about the top 5, and Matt LaFleur talks about the best 5. I think you got to say best 6 because Zach Tom has played such a pivotal role as a rookie this year. Logging snaps at left tackle for Bakhtiari, coming in and playing right tackle. He's logged snaps at guard this year. I mean, he's kind of a younger version of Elton Jenkins right now, it sure seems like. But the settling of this offensive line, and I would say the top 6, I think, has been one of the most underrated parts of this team. Yet one of the most pivotal reasons, too, why Packers are in a position, if they win on Sunday, they're into the postseason. So, want to hit that up a little bit, too. We've got Showdown coming up. We'll get a couple years. We'll do that just past 8 o'clock. We'll get a good vibes story coming at you a little bit later on. Stock reports, whose stock is up, whose stock is down. You can make your selections as well by hitting us up with a text, 715-830-1912 on that Shoe Doctors bullpen line, or on Twitter. Hit me up with a tweet at DANKASPER or Facebook.com/Kasper Sports there too. So, but let's get things rolling here this morning on the opening drive. So Giannis said after the game, after he dropped 55, career high for him, he wants his game to be boring. He wants his game to be boring. He wants to get in a position where his game's boring. Essentially what he's saying is like, this is, it's my game. It's like 40 points, 35 points, 10 rebounds, 5, 6, 7 dimes. But I want to throw out a question to you all that are out there too, is like, if we come up with a list of athletes, sports people that we've watched throughout the years that were just so dang good, yet they were so dang boring. Like, I wouldn't put Favre in there. I wouldn't say he was boring. And I don't know if I'd put Jordan in there either. I don't know if he was boring because, he had to highlight stuff. That's why I don't know if Giannis will ever get to the boring thing because he makes some spectacular plays. Tom Brady, I think you can make a case. He's boring. He's great, but he's boring. Who else would you put on that list? Just consistently good, consistently great, but they were freaking boring. And maybe, I don't know. And who else would you add to that list? Let's have a little fun with this. All right. We'll take that first break, and then the opening drive, we'll talk a little Bucks, we'll talk a little Giannis, then we'll talk a little green and gold there too, and all Badger hoops too. So, all right, we'll be back after these words. Hey, in case you missed the announcement yesterday, we're partnering up with Mike's Star Market here in town. And we got a couple brats and some snack sticks coming at you. So one of the brats will be the Man Cave Light brat, but we need your help in deciding the flavor for the other brat and the snack sticks. So you have to go to sportstalk1051.com, click on the Nation tab, and you'll see a little icon there where you just click that, and that's where you submit your ideas for a flavor for the brat and the snack sticks, okay? Can't put it on Facebook status or tweet or a text or anything like that. You got to go to the website so we can get the list together. All right, then we're going to go through it. And if we select one, winner's going to get a gift card from Mike's, okay? So big thanks to Mike's. And the bonus part of this, too, is that, we're going to get this is going to help benefit Backyard Dreams, too. The sales of the brats are going to help benefit Backyard Dreams. So that's going to be a lot of that. That's going to be awesome there too. So, but go to our website, sportstalk1051.com. You gotta go to click on the Nation tab there. You'll see the icon. It says "Help us create our brat." But you click that, and then you'll be able to submit your flavor ideas. Some good ones already coming through. And I checked it earlier this morning. But we got some good ones coming through. So keep it coming. Keep it coming. Let's see if we get a winner out of that group. All right, let's get things rolling here this morning. Opening drive. Bucks picking up a much-needed win last night. It's a quick turnaround, though, because they're in Toronto for tonight's game. And then they'll be back home against Charlotte on Friday before starting a 4-game road trip next week. That includes a couple games against Miami and a back-to-back there. But Giannis last night setting career highs in points, 55 points. His previous career high was 52 against Philadelphia in 2019. But again, Giannis, this stretch that he has had in these last few games, he's collected at least 40 points, 10 rebounds, and 5 assists in each of the past 3 games that he has played. The only other players in NBA history to have 3 straight performances of 40, 10, and 5 are Elgin Baylor. He did it twice, 61 and 63. Wilt Chamberlain in 63. Russell Westbrook in 2016. Mike Budenholzer, after the game, said he's been kind of playing with this kind of determination, this kind of just willing us in games. Tonight, we were able to win it. He has just been phenomenal. Brook Lopez saying he's just constantly improving. When you think where else he can go and how else he can improve, he just improves again. We're going to have to expand the English language in some way to come up with words to describe him. I don't know if I've said that before, but I'm sure he's going to improve again. Who knows what he's going to do next? He is just so otherworldly. And then Giannis, as we said at the beginning there, saying, I just want to get in a position that my game is boring. I just do what I do, and people don't talk about it because it becomes boring. I do it every single night. That's what I want to do. I want other people to feel like my game is boring. But I don't get bored. The greats, the best players, never get bored. They go out there, and they always give their best any given night. And I think what he's referring to when he says bored is like that's just the expectation. When he goes out there and he has great games, that's just the expectation. That's what you come to expect. I think, a comparable person to that where they set the bar so high is, like Aaron Rodgers. He has set the bar so high that if it's, a little bit below, it's like, what's wrong with Aaron, sort of thing. If it gets to a stretch run where Giannis is scoring just like 20 points, people are going to be like, what's wrong with Giannis? But I don't think Giannis will ever be, quote, boring. I don't think he has the style of game where he will ever be perceived as boring. I think there are some great ones, and we had a couple people text in Duncan. That's a great example. Mr. Fundamental. You have a nickname called Mr. Fun or the Big Fundamental. Yeah, your game's probably boring, But Tim Duncan's one of the best power forwards of all time in NBA history. That's a perfect example right there. That is a pitch perfect. So to the few of you who text that one in, I think you nailed that one. Had a couple people text in Jeter. I'd agree with that one. I could see that. He has a couple of highlight plays in his career, right? I mean, was it the playoff game against Oakland? Running towards home base, flipping the ball back, diving in the stands and such. But for the most part, was he, Ozzie Smith doing backflips or, anything like that? No, not really. I threw out Tom Brady. Great player. GOAT. For most, not all. But, has he had like Aaron Rodgers or Patrick Mahomes type throws, plays? Probably not. That's why I wouldn't put Favre as boring, because you just never knew what the hell to expect from Favre when he was out on the field. So I don't think Giannis is ever going to get to boring. I get what he's getting at. I get what he's saying. But he ain't going to ever be boring. I agree with Brook Lopez. He's going to continue to do stuff that are going to be otherworldly. Whether it's, end-to-end blocks in big-time finals games or tomahawk dunks, he's going to continue to make some ridiculous plays because he's too much of a freak. He's a Greek freak, for crying out loud. He's a Greek freak. I want to come up with a list. If you've got more players that you would put out there as like great, all-time great players, they're boring as heck, man. Just boring. Who would that be? Throw some out there, all right? There's no right or wrong answer in this thing. No right or wrong answer at all. But again, what do you say? Giannis just adds a little bit more to his legacy, to his resume, for the type of performance that he had last night. And Mike Budenholzer is exactly right. Willed his way to help the Bucks get a victory. And that's what you want to see from your greats, from your leaders. The Bucks have been in a little bit of a funk. And that's where you want to see your best of the best kind of rise up and put their team on their shoulders and will them to victory. That's what Giannis did last night. Drew Holiday is playing some limited minutes. Chris Middleton's still out. Middleton's not going to be playing in a Toronto game, already ruled out tonight. So this is where you want to see these guys kind of step up and will their team and carry their team. And that's exactly what Giannis did last night, and that's exactly what he has done through the majority part of his career. If you're looking at, again, the standings in the NBA, if we're kind of keeping an eye out there, 1.5 back the Bucks are. This Eastern Conference race is just going to be ridiculous when it comes towards the end here. It is just going to be nuts. Boston's still holding on to the 1 by a half game. Bucks 1.5, Cleveland 2, Philly 3. It's going to be crazy. So Bucks will be taking on Toronto, who right now Toronto's on the outside looking in, just 16-21 so far in the season. Toronto struggling right now in their last 10. They're just 3-7 in their last 10 games here too. So Bucks will be going up there for a quick trip across the border before coming back home to face the Charlotte Hornets on Friday. So, but, we kind of mentioned it a little bit yesterday, or maybe it was on Monday. I'm losing track of days already. But, I'm still kind of I'm a little concerned about the long-term health of Chris Middleton for the season with that knee. And maybe they're just playing it safe. Maybe they're just playing it safe here. But the longer this goes, it's just kind of like, oh, man, what's going on with that thing? Having some issues. And maybe it's just, when they got back, okay, taking the rust off, a little bit of a flare up. It's normal. Let's just, back off there a little bit. But I don't know. Right now, I'm not too comfortable with Chris Middleton's prognosis or outlook here. So, all right. I want to switch gears here quick. Keep these picks coming. All right, we got a Donald Driver pick. It looks like we got a just to be a little mean, I would say all professional NASCAR drivers are boring. But for real sports, I think Ryan Braun would classify as boring. All right. Yeah, keep them coming. Okay. Keep texting us or tweeting or Facebook, however you want to go about it this morning. So, switching gears here just a little bit before we have to take another break here because I started off this segment a little bit behind, so I'm trying to play a little catch up already here in the first hour. But I want to know. I'm going to throw out another question. What do you think has been, or who do you think has been, the most maybe, and maybe it kind of relates to Giannis's boring comment a little bit. What has been the most overlooked position, player, group from this turnaround by the Packers in the last couple weeks or last few weeks, however you want to look at it, that has kind of helped propel them to where they're at now? Now, like Keyshawn Nixon, special teams, I wouldn't say that's overlooked. He has absolutely been a part of it. He has been a big reason for it, but I don't think it's been overlooked. And I don't think it's been underappreciated. I think it's the offensive line. And you want to talk about a boring group or a boring player or a boring position? You could throw out an offensive lineman. You could throw out any of the great offensive linemen out there. That's boring. It's not flashy. It's not sexy. It doesn't, get the attention it deserves. So, when we're coming up with this list, you could probably put some of the great offensive linemen on there, and you'd be exactly right. They're boring. But when they're boring, that means they're playing at a high level. You don't notice them. We noticed the Packers' offensive line at the beginning of the season when he had all the shuffling around, had some issues up front, protection. But they have turned it around so much to where they're perceived as a top 5 group in a lot of statistics as we close out the regular season. It has settled down because of David Bakhtiari returning to the lineup. And I know he's been in and out. They've moved Elton Jenkins back to his left guard spot. They've incorporated Yash. I would throw Zach Tom in as one of the more, if we want to do players, individual players, I would throw Zach Tom into that as like one of the most, crucial, pivotal, overlooked, underappreciated players this year. I mean, if we did like rookies of the year, Christian Watson's going to get it for like the Packers. Like if we did a team rookie of the year, I'd put Zach Tom though, top 2, top 3 for what he has been able to provide because, Matt LaFleur says best 5. We always say the best 5 will play on that offensive line. I think in the Packers sense, you have to say best 6 just because of how versatile and how important Zach Tom has been to this group. Filling in for Bakhtiari at the left side, comes in the game against Minnesota last week, goes to right tackle. Few games or in the first part of the season, spent some time at guard. And we knew he was a versatile guy, a versatile offensive lineman, a younger Elton Jenkins. But what he has been able to provide for this offensive line and fill in wherever needed and still play at a high level has been pretty darn impressive. So you want to talk about boring, yet some of the best play or the great play, the offensive line. We don't talk about the offensive line unless they're screwing up. But I think you look at this group, Bakhtiari, Jenkins, Myers. I know Aaron has talked about John Runyon Jr. quite a bit this year. Yash, Zach Tom. That group has been getting it done. Opening up lanes for Aaron Jones in the running game, helping protect Aaron Rodgers. And they're going to have their hands full again this weekend against Detroit. You look at Detroit's statistics and numbers defensively, they're not great, but they got a couple of young edge rushers that can get after the quarterback. We all know about Aiden Hutchinson. And then you kind of look at the future of this group too. I think Bakhtiari is back next year. Maybe it comes back on a little bit of a, where they restructure the cap hit. But I think Bakhtiari is back next year, especially if Aaron's played. We know Elton Jenkins is back next year. We know Myers is going to be there. We know Runyon Jr. is going to be there. Yash is a restricted free agent. I mean, that should be fairly simple. I believe he's still restricted free agent. I'll double check that, but I think he'll be back next year. He's going to be back next year. I mean, for the next couple of years, this offensive line group for the Packers. Yash. No, he's not restricted. He's an unrestricted free agent. Okay, I thought somebody had said he was a restricted free agent. So no, he's an unrestricted free agent. Well, okay. Maybe that one becomes a little bit more interesting here, because I think Yash has earned a payday, an increase. But Green Bay's, I think, got a nice backup option with Zach Dom over there. Regardless, what this group has done this year, I think, has been kind of a little overlooked by all of us. Maybe a little underappreciated, but that's because they're getting a job done. They're boring. We don't talk about the offensive line when they're actually playing at a high level. Take it for granted a little bit. All right, we got to take a quick break here, but keep your picks for most boring yet great athletes of all time. Text it, tweet it, Facebook it. We'll be back. A new year means it's time for some new floors, baby. Start your 2023 off in style with a brand new floor from Carpet City Flooring Center right here in Eau Claire, Wisconsin's largest flooring supplier. Carpet City Flooring Center has the perfect floor that will rejuvenate that space of yours that, well, has needed an upgrade for a while now. You can choose from many different styles and options, including the Ridge and Max floors. I like to think of Ridge and Max flooring as the official floor of Wisconsin. Maybe we can get one of those proclamations announcing that thing. Rigid Max floors are freeze and thaw stable, waterproof, kid and pet friendly, superior noise reduction, extreme dent, impact, and scratch resistant. If that doesn't scream the official floor of Wisconsin, then I don't know what does. And Rigid Max flooring comes in many different styles, like the Bourbon Barrel, which is my favorite. And Rigid Max floors are only available at Carpet City Flooring Center. You can see them for yourself by stopping by today and chatting with the incredible staff at Carpet City Flooring Center. They're ready to answer any questions you may have, from selecting the floor that works best for you, your home, and your budget. So start 2023 off in style with some new flooring from Carpet City Flooring Center in Eau Claire. We got a few more picks here. Tony Gwynn, Mercedes Lewis, consistent blocking ability, could be considered boring, but when he catches a pass, it electrifies the team and fans. Let's take a quick phone call. What up, C-Bomb? How's it going, sir?
Well, good morning, El Capitano. How are we, my brother?
I'm doing well, man. I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'll tell you what, boy, that was the perfect answer. I can't believe I didn't think of that. Tony Gwynn, holy smokes. Who else can hit over 300 every single year and you don't even blink an eye? Nobody hits 300 anymore.
Yeah. And, I mean, it wasn't like he didn't have the home run ball or anything either. It was just base hit, base hit, base hit, baby.
Yeah, the guy was phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
This is a great question because there's a lot of really good players. And I was trying to think of two guys that really were game changers. Well, I was trying to think of guys that were really game changers that were some of the best at their position when they played. And two guys that come to mind that you might consider boring, even though they had flashy plays. Two of them for me, one is Larry Fitzgerald and one's Antonio Gates. I mean, those guys, and I think it's just the way they go about their business, man. They just, It was all business. It wasn't me, look at what I'm doing. They just went out and consistently led the league in their positions year in and year out. And both of those guys had long, awesome careers.
I like that Larry Fitzgerald pick. So that I got two names. You tell me what you think. Would you consider Jerry Rice boring?
You know what? That's funny. Yes, I would. And I actually thought of that, and I'm like, I would get blasted for bringing up Jerry Rice's name because he's probably will go down as one of the, if not the greatest, he's in the conversation of greatest wide receivers ever. And I remember watching him again. He was one of those guys that wasn't the me guy, but just every game dominated.
Yeah, I mean, he wasn't Randy Moss making ridiculous catches or Calvin Johnson, big like that, but he was just dang consistent.
He was an amazing wide receiver. And, he was a lot like, people said, bring up the name Robert Brooks. It's just he ran crisp routes, got open, caught the ball. I mean, always open. I mean, 7-11 with that guy. I remember watching him in the latter part of his career, and he was amazing. I mean, nobody could cover him.
I got another name I want to throw out, Greg Maddux. What do you think?
Ooh, that's another really good one.
Just a long career, a lot of Gold Gloves, but, I mean, he wasn't a power guy or anything like that.
No, he was he just hit his spot.
Yeah.
That guy was amazing. And one thread that kind of combines all these players is their attitudes and their professionalism. They every single one of them, you never heard them thumping their chest. You never heard them, they just did their job, and they were great professionals, great teammates. There's a lot of them. And I like you talking about the offensive line because they don't get the credit they deserve. And think of how many times we look at Aaron Rodgers dropping back in the pocket and we're like, would you throw the ball? And it's like, it's starting to get like it was a few years ago. And if it wasn't for that offensive line giving him 6 seconds up there, he'd have been sacked on most teams in the NFL. So that offensive line they've built they've done a heck of a job, I think, in the latter parts of Rodgers' career, because it wasn't long ago that line was pretty porous and it was killing us. So I think they shored that up pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, even at the beginning part of this year, I mean, we were talking about, Matt LaFleur was answering questions. Do you have your best five out there? And I think they've settled down quite nicely. I'll be honest with you. I was surprised they're ranked as a top 5 group. I really was. And then you look at the numbers and it's like, dang, we've been kind of overlooking it. Maybe how well, Dick Buckus' grandson or nephew is kind of working with that group this year.
Yeah, they've really turned it around and done a good job. And I'd say at the beginning of the year, it wasn't so much Matt LaFleur putting out his best 5. It was like putting out his only 5.
Yeah.
They had so many injuries out there. And as guys came back and got plugged in and got going, now the big giraffe is getting better here right before the playoffs, and he's playing phenomenal. I mean, you didn't even hear Zadarius Smith's name until he left the field without shaking hands last weekend. So
his stat line was all zeros, baby. All zeros. No tackles for loss, no pressures, nothing.
It was so beautiful. Music to my ears.
You betcha, man.
So, yeah, kudos to that offensive line, and kudos to great topic this morning. Got my brain churning right away as I get up today, Dan.
Oh, I like it. That's the goal, man. So everybody else keep it going, though. C-Bomb, appreciate the phone call, bud. We'll check in soon, okay?
Thanks for having me and my brother. Have a great day.
You got it. All right, keep these picks coming. We got some good ones. Hit us up with a text at the Shoe Doctors bullpen line, 715-830-1912, or hit me up on Twitter at DANKASPER, Facebook.com/Kasper Sports. So we're looking for the most boring but great, fantastic athletes of all time. And I agree with C-Bomb. I think a lot of it was just kind of their attitude, maybe, and their mindset just a little bit there, too. So, but keep those coming. I'll check out the texting line coming up here in just a little bit. We got a couple minutes to the top, but good morning, Morgan.
Hey, Kasper. You can collect more answers for your question of the day.
Yeah.
You want to play a little Wednesday Wildcard 2023 edition?
Sure, let's do it.
We're going to shuffle these babies. How was your commute in, by the way, in town here?
I was good.
Yeah?
Yeah, I didn't have any issues.
If you're up in the northern area, it was we had like the tail of 4 drives. It was all snow on the back roads. Then we hit kind of like that, a little bit in between sleet and then rainy, sloppy here in Eau Claire. So if you're trying to do any of that back roads or up north driving, it gets a little weird.
Yep. And reminder, too, as we mentioned, Chippewa Falls, even just a little farther north, they're on delayed right now. So.
And a lot of schools are coming in either delayed, canceled, or now there's that virtual option. So
that's what I was saying. I'm glad as a kid we barely had any snow days, but I'm glad that wasn't even an option when I was a kid.
But you touched on something that I was just talking about with one of my buddies too. It's like, I swear, as a kid, we never got days off.
Yeah.
And Siggy had 3 in a row off a couple weeks ago. I know a lot of schools did, and that was unheard of.
Yeah.
3 days off in a row, there's no way. That was never something that we seemed to wrestle with. But I did notice with the snow we're getting now, doesn't it kind of remind you of the snowbanks when you were younger? And not just because we were shorter, but we did have those big, huge snowbanks we used to make forts out of and stuff.
We lived next to there was a parking lot there. It was the Ford garage, but they would always plow it. So
that's
like
the
hills.
Best.
Yeah, they'd always have those hills. But yeah, I remember it because that was how I would sled.
Parking lots were the jam. If you could find a parking lot that had a big snow dump on it.
Yep.
All right, we're going to have Kasper put his luck on the line here, draw the Wednesday wild card, all shuffled up, and answer us this. What trip has affected your life so far?
Trip?
Yeah. Did you ever come back from a trip being like...
I barely travel, so...
Well...
I'd probably say maybe... the only one I really flew to was New York and New Jersey and that over there.
Seen
Valley Forge, which I'm a big history guy, so and Statue of Liberty. So.
If you liked seeing that, you should read 1776.
I have it.
Oh yeah, it's good. It's very good.
I have it.
Yep.
David
McCullough. Yep. All right, back into. And do you know this? This doesn't sound like a fun family vacation or anything, but just on the heels of Christmas. So, Washington Cross, the Delaware, they reenact that every year. Like, there's a group of people that dress like in, period clothing and stuff and show up at the Delaware and cross and do the whole paddle across thing like Washington did. So,
wow.
If that's your thing, if you're looking to go honeymoon number 2 or something, you could dig into that options. Real nice.
Yeah.
All right, you're heading out on a road trip right now then on the heels of your last answer. If you were heading out on a road trip, where would you go? Priority stop number 1, and what's one thing you would pack?
Yellowstone. And what would I pack? Boy.
Gotta think.
bear repellent.
Yeah, you might need it. You're not going to wrestle any bears out there, right?
Exactly.
Grr.
All right. Thanks, Margs.
Anytime.
We got a quick break after these news updates, and we'll get back to more of your answers. All right, second hour kicking off on this Wednesday morning, making the turn Wednesday. Again, reminder, we do have some school closings and delays out there. You can head to our website at sportstalk1051.com for the latest updates on school closings and delays, brought to you by Hovland's and Service Master of Chippewa Valley. Baldwin Woodville's closed. Just going through some of these. Boyceville, you're closed now. Bruce, virtual learning. Sorry, kids. Chippewa Falls and McDonald, you're opening up a couple hours late. Elk Mound is opening a couple of hours late. Durand, Arkansas closed. Colfax is delayed. We got Glenwood City closed this morning. Menominee, you're delayed a couple of hours as well. So, but Spring Valley closed too. So, but you can get the whole list at our website, sportstalk1051.com. All right, keep your picks coming for the great but most boring athletes all the time. We got a few more to get to here. I'll get to those in just a second, but let's kick off this like we usually do, the second hour, with some sports nuggets of the day. Brought to you by ANSI Insurance. It was 1883. Here you go, surveyor, if you're listening. The Ontario Rugby Football Union was formed. The organization was the forerunner of the CFL. But we had the 1920, the National Negro Baseball League was organized. 1957, the Dodgers bought a 44-passenger twin-engine airplane for $775,000. They were the first team to own their own plane. We got, let's go, 1974, NBC presented a hockey game in prime time. The Boston Bruins and the New York Rangers were the teams in the game. We'll get to a little hockey talk here in a couple minutes, too. We got 1976, the Dallas Cowboys became the first wild card team to make it to the Super Bowl. They beat the Rams 37-7 in the NFC title game. Let's go with Mary Shane in 1977 was hired by the Chicago White Sox as the first woman TV play-by-play announcer. The USFL 1983 held its first player draft. Without looking, I know we usually do Pop Quiz Tuesday, but without looking, can anybody in the next couple minutes tell me who the first player was drafted in the 1983 USFL draft without looking it up?
Herschel Walker.
That's your pick?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll tell you if you're right here in a couple minutes. I'll give some people some thoughts. You didn't look it up, did you?
I did not.
Okay. Let's go with 1984. Wayne, the Great One Gretzky, scored 8 points, 4 goals, and 4 assists for the second time in his NHL career. Let's go. Man, we got quite a few here. Do we need to bring this one up? I remember watching this. 2003, Packers lost to the Atlanta Falcons in the NFC wildcard game. It was the first time that the Packers had lost a playoff game at home. Thank you, Michael Vick. There. So, remember watching that one. I would have been junior in high school because I had to work at 5 o'clock at the gas station the next morning.
I was working at Wax. We had a TV in the studio, and because the game was on ABC, we could get ABC in there. I'm like, wow, they're actually going to lose a Lambeau game?
Yeah. I remember watching that, staying up late because it was a night game.
Yeah.
And I had to be at work by 5 o'clock to pump gas for people because they didn't know how to pump it themselves. So we were a full service gas station.
That's right.
Good old days back then. So, all right. You ready? I know it was really quick and maybe didn't give enough time, but Herschel Walker is not the correct answer.
Huh.
It is not.
I think I know it, but I've forgotten. What is it?
Dan Marino. The Los Angeles Express actually selected Dan Marino with the first overall pick.
And then he was like, nah.
Yeah. He's like, nah, I'm good.
Okay.
So, yep. 1983. Tim Spencer, Chicago Blitz, was the second overall pick, running back from Ohio State. We had Eric Dickerson was 6th overall, Arizona the Wranglers over there. So, yeah. Steve Young's on here.
That makes sense.
Wait, no, he's not. Never mind.
He's not?
Well, he is somewhere, but not. I misread the name for
not
that.
near the top.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. So, but yeah. All right. How about that? That's a good little trivia. Everybody thinks, it's like, oh yeah, Dan Marino, first one. Doesn't necessarily mean that they had to play. Remember, like Reggie White was Reggie White was USFL too.
Yes, he was. I think he played for Philadelphia, I think, or was it? I can't remember which was it Baltimore? I can't remember which USFL team he played for.
The Memphis Showboats.
That's right. That's right. Who are coming, as you may have known, are coming to the USFL this year. It's a weird thing. Like the Tampa Bay Bandits are going away temporarily, but the Memphis Showboats are coming in. But I think that's in part because they're expanding the hubs. So they're not all going to be played in Birmingham. But one of the good hubs is in Memphis. So Tampa Bay goes away a bit because they got to have equal numbers of teams. But they figured we'll put a team in Memphis. So let's call it the Showboats like they used to be. And then the Bandits will be back at some point in the future. Gotcha.
So, I was just kind of looking up like Herschel Walker. He signed with the New Jersey Generals in 1983. So I'm just kind of looking on here. So I mean, he wasn't drafted then, right? If he signed,
I'm trying to think if he went through that or how that worked.
Well, because he's not on this list. I'm kind of scrolling through it. So let me do a little research here for you. Trying to get through all the political stuff on his Wikipedia page these days. Now,
I know that's now you say Herschel Walker and like no. There was a very prominent football career before that happened.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'll do some research on there. But
okay.
I'm assuming since he signed, maybe he wasn't part of the draft then, right?
I thought he would have been. Well, wherever the 1983 USFL got to be a list. USFL 1983 draft list. I find it hard to believe that he was not drafted, but no, he was not drafted.
Nope.
I think. See, now that I think about it, I think he was signed, and I think that was before that happened. Like he dove in really fast, and that was like a USFL play to try to say, "Hey, look who we got! We got the biggest." I mean, arguably, I think at the time, the biggest player in college football.
Yeah,
I can't even compare him to anyone right now. He was bigger than all of the players in college football at this moment. He was huge in the early 80s.
Yep. Because I'm looking at because Jim Kelly didn't want to play. He went to the USFL too in 1984 because he didn't want to play for a cold weather team.
Yeah.
Remember that old? He enlisted the Packers and Bills and Vikings as teams he didn't want to go to.
Right.
So,
yeah, they were great.
How'd that work? Well, it actually kind of worked out for Jim Kelly if you actually think about it.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I think a lot of people kind of forget about some of the great USFL players that actually were a part of it for a little bit.
There were a fair number, and there's a reason why the league was as popular as it was. It was also quality play. They had thousands and thousands and thousands of people in the stands. I mean, they were selling out NFL stadiums. They were getting really good ratings. I mean, I know before cable really became all of it. But it still happened. If it was really that bad, you wouldn't have had people showing up. They showed up because the quality was good.
Yep. All right. Let's we've got some more picks coming in here. We got boring athletes, Dustin Johnson and Brooks Koepka. We got Robin Yount, a couple of picks on here too. Karl Malone and John Stockton, and honestly, the entire Jazz team was picked on there. Another Robin Yount pick on there too. So, you think the good old pick and roll and the short shorts were boring back in the 90s? Come on. Jeff Hornacek was boring. I'll just say that. So that was, easily. That was a good one. I feel like a lot of old school power forwards were pretty boring besides Sean Kemp. You know, it was just dunking it all over the place for crying out loud. So, or Charles Barkley throwing fists or Dennis Rodman throwing fists and that sort of thing too. So, but who was like, who we were kind of having some fun with this and we were having a lot of picks, but who would anybody like come off the top of your head? Like most boring but great players. Like I feel like Tom Brady is boring, but he's great.
For me, it's Duncan and Trout.
Yeah, when you have a name, the big fundamental, you're pretty boring.
When Mike Trout's most talked about aspect of his career is how besides being on the Angels and never making the playoffs, is that he's not that telegenic, maybe he's kind of photogenic, but he's not that telegenic, and he's like Like if Mike Trout walked into a store and you passed him by at Festival Foods or Hy-Vee or some place around here, and he's walking by the soup aisle, do you know it's Mike Trout?
Probably not.
No.
Yep.
That's the thing. Granted, you could say that about a lot of baseball players because that speaks to baseball's inability to market their players. Yep. But Mike Trout especially, I barely know what he sounds like. I know, but hardly, considering he's the best. I mean, he may be the best player in baseball, and I'm like, I think I know.
But in terms of like playing on the field, though, too.
That too. He's not.
Tony Gwynn was a popular pick so far, too. I mean, just base hit. But
Trout does so many things well, and you can barely think of any of those things. That's strange. Like the home run highlight. Like, what's his swing? What's a fabulous catch of his? Which I know web gems aren't really a thing anymore because 3 true outcomes. But all of that, you can't really stolen. No, there's nothing really there, but he does it all well. So Trout and Duncan, I think, are tops for me. I mean, you could say Pete Sampras, probably for tennis.
Yeah, since you said that, I'll go. I thought of one in the golf world. Ernie Els was extremely boring during his prime.
Yeah.
The swing and everything, because it was so slow. I remember when in high school and we were talking and all that golf and that, but it was just like, how do you replicate Ernie Els' swing? Because it's so freaking slow, but he had the perfect swing plane, the transfer of weight, but he was boring.
Yeah.
He was boring, but he was winning. It was frustrating. It's like, that's not a guy that you can market, essentially.
No. And it was tough to do. I mean, granted, being foreign in America, that also is a bit of a thing, but I don't think that was the dominant thing at all. And again, I think that speaks more to personality than where you're from. If you've got personality, it will shine through no matter where you come from. And it will translate to other countries. If an American going overseas coming to America, that will translate. I think Roger Federer, to a degree, I think it going up against some pretty high octane opponents has made Federer seem fairly cool by comparison, but he's always been fairly cool by comparison. I mean, he's always seems chill after he wins another Grand Slam.
Yeah.
So Federer and Sampras, I think, are both in that category. Others.
You can think about it.
But those are the ones that jump right out.
I already said that you can name every good offensive lineman and put it on that list because they're boring.
Marvin
Harrison?
That's
a good thing. Yeah, I'd said Jerry Rice too.
Yeah.
I mean, he wasn't a Randy Moss and Calvin Johnson, flashy or big. He's got it done. Marvin Harrison's a good one. I'd say that. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Think now. Is Barry Sanders boring because he's modest?
No, he's not boring because I'm talking like play on the field. Okay, he was electric as all get out.
That's the thing. Yeah. There's a big dichotomy there.
Yep. A lot. I mean, we can all imagine a Barry Sanders run right now in our head.
Yep. I'm watching spins right now in my mind.
Like when we talk about, can you name a great catch from Marvin Harrison, like a Hail Mary or something like that? No, I can't. I can with Randy Moss. I can think of a few. Calvin Johnson, I can think of a few. But yeah, Barry Sanders, it's on loop right now.
Yes.
Absolutely. But personality, he was a dud. he was boring.
He very much kept to himself.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
Nothing wrong with that.
If you want to be quiet, just perform on the field. That's all that matters.
Yep. So, hey, I want to touch on a little bit of hockey. Right now. Hockey. Because the Wilds, they're not playing bad in their last 10 games.
They've gotten better of late. Yes, they've reestablished themselves. How are your Kraken doing?
They're still third right now.
They are.
Yes, they are in the Pacific.
Wow.
So they're at 44 points right now, but they're behind Vegas and the Kings. Did you hear that the next outdoor hockey game where it's going to be next year?
Is it going to be at I never know the name of it because the name has changed. Questfield, I'm thinking.
In Seattle,
the home of the Seahawks and the Sounders.
No, it's going to be at the Mariners Field.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Again, that's changed. T-Mobile.
Yep. Going up against the Vegas Golden Knights.
Oh, the 2 expansion teams.
Yeah,
I did not know that. Very good.
I like that. I heard that yesterday. I'm like, and somebody made the point too. It's like that's actually smart on NHL's point because 2 expansion teams still kind of pump them up and get them that exposure.
Yeah.
So
that's
like
cool.
That. Yeah,
that's very cool. I like that.
But Boston continues to dominate right now. They haven't lost a game at home. They're 19-0-3. They've tied 3 times, but they haven't lost a game at home, and they've only lost 4 games on the road right now.
They are okay. They are. I mean, they're far and away the best team right now, but it's still early. And how many times have we seen the far and away best team in hockey not even get to the Stanley Cup final? It happens a lot. And believe me, Bruins fans know that. They've seen enough of that happen, especially among the teams around them. Toronto, Tampa Bay in their division have done similar sorts of things in relatively recent history. So no, there's not going to be a single Bruins fans. It's all like President's Cup. Whoa. Well, no, there's a long, long, long ways to go. But yes, the Bruins are far and away the cream of the crop right now. Wild actually have one of the best runs of late in the West.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they have climbed back out of, they weren't really out of it.
They're 8-2 in their last 10.
Yeah, but they were kind of on the verge of not really being, and again, if the playoffs ended today, which again is way, way, way ahead of schedule, but they were kind of spinning their I'm making a cross analogy, spinning their skates, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Their goaltending has picked up. Kirill Kaprizov is just doing, oh my gosh. It's marvelous having him on that team. I've said that before. I'll say that again. I'll probably say it for the next 10 years. It's incredible what he's doing in Minnesota. So yeah, they've gotten their engine going right now. They're in good shape. We can just take down Dallas at the top, which I was not too pleased to see Dallas beat them, but that applies to literally every game between them and the Wild.
Yeah. All right. So
your other Anaheim Ducks are not doing well.
No, I've dropped them. Okay. Yeah, I've moved on. Okay. I'm fully on board with that. I did not get a Kraken jersey or sweater, I should say, for Christmas, though. A little disappointed from Santa.
Really?
Just saying, but maybe eventually we'll get there. So, all right, we got to take a quick break. And speaking of boring, let's talk about this Badger basketball team. There you go. That's a boring team the last few years, right? Well, besides
they define boring basketball, and they're good too.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. So let's talk a little college hoops. Take that break. We'll be back after these words. Barely squeaking out the Gophers of Minnesota last night. So I did a quick history lesson, really quick, on the Herschel Walker thing. It's actually a little bit of a deeper story than, maybe if you don't know the whole thing. So, like, because he was an underclassman yet at Georgia. And remember the NFL, no underclassmen sort of thing?
Yeah.
So it was like a lot of back wheel dealing, surprise, surprise. Even the Cowboys were apparently trying to get involved in this sort of thing. But so, they're trying to get this premier player involved in the USFL, but they wanted him in like a New York market because of his name and popularity and that sort of thing. So that's, not to get into too much in the weeds here or anything like that. But essentially, he signed in February. The draft was in January. So that also factored into it, too.
Okay.
So, which makes sense.
Right.
So,
okay, that makes sense.
They're a little like, let's get him to New York area, bigger market.
Well, yeah.
That sort of thing. And
that was a thing at that point. I mean, again, that's how you make your splash. And it worked.
Yep.
I mean, initially, Herschel Walker didn't exactly tear up the USFL, but he was still a get. And that the whole point was to put the USFL on the radar, that they weren't going to be the WFL. For those who know their 70s non-NFL football history, that was a disaster. And the USFL, I'm sure that was in the minds of the executives going, we do not want that to happen. And it lasted about as long, but it was way, way, way better than the WFL. And getting a guy like Herschel Walker, even though the WFL had their share of stars, remember the Dolphins running backs that went over there, among others. It was better than the WFL.
Yeah, and I was reading a little bit really quickly again just during that break too. It's like the USFL was trying to do we do this and then maybe ruin our relationships with college because now we're going to be, our college is going to let us go watch these kids if they know that we're going to go after juniors now too, sort of thing. So it was like they said the risks or the benefits of getting Herschel Walker into popularity were better than that. So yeah, but a little bit more to it. So
there
you go. We went down that hole and we found it out.
Because there seems to also be this growing push to eliminate drafts because of player independence, et cetera, which makes that there's a logical debate there. But the notion of, well, let's like get this guy earlier, we'll sign him there, we'll draft him a year early, like that just kind of happened all the time. Now, I mean, it didn't happen all the time, but that sort of stuff would happen occasionally. Like, oh, okay, cool. Now it'd be like, what are you doing? Controversy. What's Skip's take? What's Stephen A's take? And, okay.
This might be a project for me because, me, I'm a history nerd. But you think about okay, so the USFL draft in 83, the first player, I think that's a great trivia question. People don't realize it was Dan Marino. Yet, a few months later in the NFL draft, the famous 1983 draft, Dan Marino was a 27th overall pick.
He was the last of the vaunted quarterback class of 83.
Yeah.
And ended up being
maybe one of the best. Yeah, him and John Elway are up there, right?
Yeah, I mean, he beat up Ken O'Brien.
Yeah. Jim Kelly was in that group too, but I think that's that's interesting to kind of maybe deep dive into that whole 1983 draft, USFL, NFL type of era.
I mean, there was that. Did you see the 30 for 30 on the 83 draft?
I did.
Yeah, which was a really good one.
Yep.
But then to tie that to the USFL and how they were, again, there's more to it. Like you were just saying, there's more to it than just the draft. How we were just saying, how the USFL was trying to establish itself as a viable competitor to the NFL at that time, and what their choices were. And again, like you said, why was Marino one? Now, maybe Marino was one because he had just literally come off of playing for Pitt in a high-profile game. Wasn't it? I'm trying to think. Was Pitt playing? Were they playing Penn State?
I think so.
In the Sugar Bowl, Penn State won the national championship. So that would kind of be akin to today, like drafting Stetson. I know Stetson Bennett's maybe not the best example because he's not expected to really have any sort of NFL career. But okay, Max Duggan.
I was going to say a TCU guy. Yeah.
There you go. Yeah. Okay, that would be the equivalent of if the USFL were starting up today, circa 83. Again, forget current USFL. and drafting Max Duggan number 1 today.
Yeah.
Several days after the Fiesta Bowl. But he's not necessarily the number 1 guy to go in the NFL draft.
Right.
And that might be a broken analogy again, considering Dan Marino had the draft concerns, et cetera, which most of us know about. And if you don't, look it up. It was a thing back then. It was not ultimately, but it was a concern when he was going pro. That's none of that with Max Duggan.
And that's, I was just looking through it, and, so Ken O'Brien was drafted before Dan Marino by the Jets, right?
Yeah.
He was drafted 66 overall in the USFL. I'm just, that's the stuff I want to look like.
Right.
I would love to see like scouting reports and like, because everybody talks about the draft process now and just like, what was it like in '83? Like,
it was way less.
Oh yeah.
But O'Brien ended up being an okay quarterback. Like the Jets were competitive in the mid '80s, but it wasn't Dan Marino ultimately. No. And again, how many times look at some of the more recent draft classes. There is a lot of. Speaking of Jets quarterback picks of late, we don't know in a lot of cases, but yeah, that might be a good do like a podcast series.
That might be that's a good idea. I think that's a good. Quick trivia. Do you know who the third quarterback was taken in '83?
In the USFL draft?
No, in the NFL one.
Let's see. So I'm trying to remember who was all in that. So it was Kelly, Marino, O'Brien. I really should know the other ones. If I stopped to think about it, I would.
He was drafted by the Patriots. That helps you. Right after Jim Kelly. Yes. Very good. Ding, 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 ding. And then you had Ken O'Brien there too. So
that's right, because Eason played for Illinois in that game where there was that game between Illinois and Wisconsin in '82. I can't remember the exact play, but it was like one of those most memorable Camp Randall moments. Those who are old enough probably ask Bosold about it. I'll bet he remembers. Yes, I totally did the age thing with him, but he probably actually does remember that because I was before you weren't born and he was working here. So I just did age him. Yeah, who were the other two? Because there were like 6 quarterbacks, I thought. 5 or 6.
Well, it's Elway.
That's right.
Elway, then we forgot one who was right before Jim Kelly.
Was it a guy that was drafted by the Chiefs?
It was.
Yeah.
Also another Big Ten quarterback.
Oh. Who was it? Like
Todd
Blackledge.
There you go.
Yes, the commentator.
Yep.
Todd Blackledge. That's right.
So.
Interesting draft there.
Yeah.
And again, not too many complete. Okay, Easton was eaten alive in the Super Bowl. More than anyone would have been eaten alive in Super Bowl 20. But the thing is, those quarterbacks, none of them were absolute disasters. There wasn't a Josh Rosen in there. If he's like the go-to example of a disastrous top 10 pick, none of them were that bad. I mean, again, Eason didn't do much, but he had his moments. Blackledge.
There's 7 Pro Football Hall of Famers in this first round. For all the talk about the quarterbacks, there's a total of 7 Hall of Famers in this first round.
And only, 3 of them are quarterbacks.
Yeah.
But, I mean, that's 3, but that's only 3.
Because Eric Dickerson was the 2nd overall pick. Jim Covert, the offensive lineman for Chicago. Bruce Matthews. And then Darryl Green was right after Dan Marino, the final pick in the first round.
Wow.
Yeah. 7 Hall of Famers in that first round.
Sometimes you luck out that way.
Yeah. I'm just kind of looking. I'm scrolling through all the other rounds, and there was only one more Hall of Famer that looks like that was drafted throughout the rest of the draft. One Pro Football Hall of Famer after that. There was another Bear, Richard Dent. And you have to go to the 8th round for that. 203 overall.
At least everyone was picking, like, they knew talent that year. Not one of those, like, diamonds in the roughs. Sometimes it actually works out where you know who's good and you pick them, and there they are.
Yep. Yeah, kind of like Brock Purdy. He's probably going to be in the Pro Football Hall of Fame now. So,
right there, going in the same class as Romeo Dobbs.
Yep. Oh, hey, Anthony Carter was almost Mr.
Mr. Irrelevant.
Yeah, in this draft.
Wow, AC.
Second to last pick.
Gosh,
second to last pick.
See, so sometimes those. Now, wait, which pick was that? What round and pick? And I don't have it up in front of me, but what round and pick was that?
12th round, pick number 334.
Gosh.
Yeah.
So that's actually more irrelevant than today's irrelevance.
Oh, yeah.
Was. And yet, Anthony Carter went on to have a pretty good career.
Mm-hmm.
He's not Hall of Fame, but he was
listed as the 50 greatest Vikings. So
yeah, he was actually pretty good with the Michigan Panthers in the USFL, and yeah, he was the number one receiver on the Vikings when they had some decent teams in the late '80s into the early '90s. Yeah, AC was good. I know he got overshadowed by, of course, Vikings have had those really good receivers, but Anthony Carter was solid.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there you go. A little fun fact there. All right, quickly before we get to some stat reports, Badgers last night squeaking out a victory against the Minnesota Golden Gophers, 63-60. But maybe the biggest thing to come out of this game is that the Badgers might be missing Tyler Wall for some time. He left the game early due to an ankle injury. But you look at, this Badger team, and I know Greg Gard kind of had some fun with it a couple weeks ago, saying they're a drama team right now. They don't make things easy on themselves. And you look at the last few games here and how they've started games. They've started really slow. You go back to Lehigh where they were actually down by 1 at the break, and then against Western Michigan, they only led by 2, and then against Minnesota, they started off with 3 turnovers in their first 6 possessions and just 1 for 8 on the field. And the Badgers are the worst rebounding team in the entire Big Ten, and they got, Golden Gophers really took advantage of that last night with Stephen Krall in foul trouble, Tyler Wall injured. I think it was like 40-24 advantage in rebounding there. But thanks to Stephen Krall, who when he was on the court and not in foul trouble, and Chucky Hepburn, they were able to, I think, can we properly say, escape with a victory?
Yeah.
Escape with a victory.
And the Gophers are not good.
Yeah.
Let's be honest. I think it's the second straight season that I want to see a majority of the roster. You can fact check me on that, but I think a majority of the roster got turned over via transfer portal.
Yeah.
I think they're starting to stabilize a bit. It's the whole post Patino now in Ben Johnson territory. But they're not there yet at a minimum.
Mm-hmm.
This should have been a blowout. It wasn't. But the Gophers took advantage of a tough spot with Wisconsin and found that weak spot there.
I know Wisconsin's ranked 14th. They're the second highest ranked team in the Big Ten, but I don't know if I would say they're the second best team in the Big Ten right now.
Like, are they? The new bracketology came out late yesterday. They're a 5 seed still. Marquette, by the way, up to a 5 seed in case anyone's curious. Does that seem right? Right now,
I think, yeah, I'd probably put them at a 5.
Which, of course, means, yes, infamous 5-12 matchup.
Mm-hmm.
Fast forwarding already 2.5 months, does Wisconsin seem like as currently constituted, like the classic 5-12 upset 5 seed?
Yeah, I can see that. I hate to be a downer, but I can definitely see that.
In the Big Ten season, like the bulk of it just last night, and we're already like, yep, they're getting a 5-12 upset.
Mm-hmm.
But that's kind of where they're assessed right now by a guy who knows how to assess this sort of stuff.
Yeah. Because when you say 5 seed, you're like, oh, that's like what, 21 through 25, 24 rankings in that, and they're ranked 14th. So, a lot of people are like, that doesn't make it. But I mean, I don't know. They make me nervous. I don't know what to expect game in and game out with this team right now.
So what was there a weakness? You were kind of talking about the rebounding and such. Was there a weakness? And I apologize to anyone listening. I don't have BTN, so I wasn't able to watch the game. But from what you know of this, was there any weakness last night where you go, wow, that is going to be exploited throughout the season, not to the point where the Badgers are suddenly going to be unranked in a bubble team, but where their ceiling is probably 14th ranked, second, third in the Big Ten, but probably falling a bit. What was that? Did the Gophers find that last night? And basically,
I don't know if they necessarily found it. I think it's just something that has been, kind of prevalent throughout the entire season. Is that, if they're going to go up against bigger teams, they're going to struggle to rebound the ball. They're going to struggle to crash the boards. That to me, and I don't think that's something that Minnesota exposed. I think that's just something they took advantage of, especially with Wall being out and Stephen Krall with foul trouble. But even with those guys in the lineup throughout the beginning part of the season, Badgers are still dead last in Big Ten in rebounding. So I think that's just one of the weaknesses. If they end up going up against a physical, bigger team, they're going to struggle with that, and then they're going to have to hit their outside shots. There's not going to be a whole lot of room for error. There's not going to be a whole lot of opportunities for second chance points. Yeah. The one thing that they did take advantage of last night against the Gophers was the turnovers. Gophers had 20 turnovers, and Wisconsin had a 21-5 edge in turnovers and points off turnovers. But, I mean, again, that's the Gophers. That's not like probably, Purdue or Indiana at this point.
They're not going to turn it over as much. Right now, those would be losses. I mean, if Minnesota came that close, those would be losses. Ohio State would be a loss.
And Wisconsin, and I know they made a comeback against Kansas, in the second half, but they've got this trend where they kind of like start off a little sluggish and all that. And it's like, okay, I know you did it against Kansas where you almost, you almost got it, but you'd like to see them start off fairly hot, in these games instead of trying to claw their way back or grinding it out with these games.
Mm-hmm. There is going to be a cap on this season. I think they're better than they were predicted.
Mm-hmm. They are a Wisconsin team,
right? Like I always presume they're going to be better than predicted. That they'll probably be about 20th, 15th ranked.
Do you think a lot of people just get caught trying to compare them to the 2014-15 teams now? The Frank Kaminsky, Sam Decker, the Nigel Hayes, the Bronson Kane. That's what we want.
It happens to every team that breaks through on a high-profile level and doesn't consistently do it otherwise. That becomes the gold standard, obviously. I'm sure there are Virginia fans right now that are I know Virginia's a top. What are they?
They're top 5. Virginia's up there, aren't
they? They've been up. Gosh, and I was just studying the top 25 the other day, and suddenly I forgot. The point is, Virginia fans are going to point to the national championship in 2019. That's the standard that you got to get to. I mean, I don't know any Virginia fans, so maybe they're actually not. Maybe they're like, yeah, we're good. But that's going to be the point. Anytime you break through to a Final Four, a national championship, I mean, North Carolina fans are probably like, come on, guys, what happened here? Even though it was a borderline miracle run last year, and now they could barely get in the top 25. They're back out this week. But
Virginia's 11, by the way.
Okay, that's what I thought. They were like in the teens or somewhere like that, but they've been near the top this season. That's the standard. That, I mean, for the longest time, I'm sure Houston fans were comparing him to the Phi Slamma Jamma era. Well, now they're finally back in the top 5. They're going to be number 1 in all likelihood next week unless they lose this week. That's a point. So I think that happens to a degree. At least I think Badger fans do, and I think some national prognosticators. But the reality is Badger men's basketball nowadays, now that we've seen enough with Greg Gard, I think we can safely say they're going to be an above average team. That doesn't necessarily mean they'll be great, but they could luck out in a certain situation. They're not going to settle at the bottom of the conference. They're going to be good.
Yeah.
It depends on if that's what you kind of want. You're not necessarily always going to win the Big Ten, but you could. And I mean, it kind of gets back to the Badger football conundrum. But I think you get a bit more of a break with Badger basketball than Badger football, because the thought is with Badger football that like there's just a few slots. You got to be really good to get there. Whereas with basketball, you can go on that run.
I'm going to throw this question out to everybody, and then we'll answer it a little bit later on. But I don't know if anybody saw this too. I think it was yesterday, but the NCAA Transformation Committee's final report recommends an expansion of championship tournaments to incorporate 25% of the teams, which means if they were to expand the March Madness tournament, you're talking about 90 teams.
Oh, boy.
90 teams in that thing. So do you want to see 90 teams? Do you want it to stay at 68? Because you can't say cut. They're not going to cut, right? They're not going to go down to 64 again or 50 or whatever. They ain't going to do that. So do you want to see March Madness expanded? Do you agree with that report? Or what do you got? What do you got? I was following Jeff Goodman's, who covers college college basketball timeline yesterday when he was doing this.
Mm-hmm.
And he said that he tweeted out, Board of Directors is expected to review the transformation committee's recommendations next week. If they vote and pass it, then it goes to the men's basketball committee. My guess is that the group is too smart to screw up the NCAA tournament and expand to 90.
Wow. I think he's right. And he would know better than any of us around here, for sure. Is there an inherent problem with it other than our viewership and March Madness? I mean, there'd be more games, and the usual explanation when it comes to playoffs is always expand, never contract.
But here's the thing, too, with the March Madness thing. Like, okay, that means there's going to be more opening games. And when does everybody get geeked up about March Madness? It's the opening rounds, right? Yeah. Not the play-in. I'm not talking about that. Yeah. I'm talking the first Thursday and Friday. You know, we all take days off and we all go to the brewskis and all that sort of stuff. Well, now you might have to have another day of that thing. Heck yeah. You know, that's more money in the pocket.
Yeah. Another day off.
Another day off.
Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Oh, yeah. Boy, like 5 days of basketball now. But what's also the quality at that point?
Right. But I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
But
so, I mean,
how many people are going to care about that?
I don't know. Like, there is a certain point where it starts to lose a little bit of attention. I mean, I will say, like, for example, with the NFL, and I know the ratings aren't terrible, but some of those 2-7 matchups, and I know we're on the verge of a 2-7 matchup here in Western Wisconsin that will have a lot of people, well, then statewide, that would pay a lot of attention regardless of the opponent. But those 2-7 matchups have been pretty bad over the past. Now, granted, we don't have that much of a sample size either. I think that will change. Mm-hmm. But
although I will say, if the Miami Dolphins get in and Tua plays, it's not going to happen anymore because of with the Buffalo situation.
Yeah,
so never mind.
Know about that? Yeah. So you can expand a lot, but then some of those first rounds can be kind of.
Oh yeah.
I mean, you're dealing with not the. Well, also, does this end up becoming one of those where you have a lot of buys, where like the 1 through 4 get a bye, so it's like a 5-16, 6-15, 7-14 matchup, something like that. Do we necessarily even want to watch some of those games? Because are we getting the best possible matchups early on? Like, I still want to see some of the better teams. It's fun to see like a 2 seed go down, a 1 seed potentially go down. I'm not that jacked to see the 8th seed fall to the 11th seed.
Yeah, it's watered down, but some of the benefits though too is some of those programs will get to the NCAA tournament, which means what? They'll get some extra cash.
Yeah, and
into their programs.
Yeah, money talks. So I still don't think it happens though, because again, if it kind of if it makes it more complicated, you have 90 teams. Making bracket picks becomes that much more. I mean, I think there's something to be said. This may sound lame, but there's something to be said for having a nice, even looking bracket. You just fill it all out. If that thing's got like sub brackets and this thing sticking out on the side because of whatnot, or it's really huge and there's all these lines, like it gets even more, there's going to be a fair number of people who are like, no, like this is too much work. If it starts to get to that, that's part of the reason why March Madness has become so big, because it gets into a lot of people who don't care that much about college.
You would have to do buys because then it doesn't work out to Sweet 16 or Elite Eights or Final Four. You know what I mean?
The only other way the only way you avoid buys is to, again, double it.
Yeah, you got to do that even. Yeah.
Which, again, there have been buys in the past in the tournament going back to like the 70s and whatnot. It's been even for a while, for a very long while now.
Yeah.
But
128, huh?
Gosh. Hey, Gophers are getting in like every year. Woo!
Wow. Can you imagine? And that's actually Jeff did a Twitter poll. Let me see. Yeah, he's expand to 90 or so, remain at 68, go back to 64, or go to 128. Do you want to know the results?
128 win?
No, they actually got the lowest votes, thank God. But it was remain at 68 was 59%.
Yeah.
Go back to 64 was the second highest. So I mean, fans don't want it, but when was the last time major sports leagues listened to fans?
Yeah, I know. That's the problem. And they're daring people to say you're not going to watch. Well, I mean, they'll watch to a certain. You'll get basketball fans, and there are plenty of casual fans that don't pay attention to the regular season that much, but they will tune in for the tournament. That'll still happen. It's like playoff expansion in the other sports, baseball, football. People will still tune in as they go along. The question is, do the other casual fans that come along because of bracket pools and such, do they drift away? And that would be a cut. I mean, that the ratings would go down. There are people that are not going to care anymore if they don't have any skin in the game.
With those early games and those first round games, nobody's going to be watching them. They're going to go to the bar and say they're watching them. But let's be real, you're not watching them.
There's too much to keep up with.
You're not. You're just at it like, all right, another excuse to go get that other TV in the man cave and put it up there.
Yeah, ultimately, I don't think it happens.
I don't either.
And the Badgers still would get upset no matter what, in whatever the future 5-12 matchup is anyway.
Right.
I'm not saying that as a Gopher fan. Let's just be real. That's what happens.
We got to take a break here. Really quick edition of stock reports. Okay. We'll do that coming up after these quick words. All right, really quick edition. Let's run through the stock reports. Who's rising? Who's falling? I'll go first.
Go.
Stock rising. Come on, it's easy. Green Bay. That's an easy one right there.
Yeah.
Stock falling right now. Quarterback situations across the NFL.
Yeah,
being very generic on that, but there's a lot of you look at the Colts, they've screwed it up. Washington, they've screwed it up. The quarterback situations across the NFL.
Not a good ones.
No.
My riser is Sonny Dykes. I don't know if he's moving on or anything. I mean, he's from West Texas. I guess the University of would be the next logical choice, but Texas does seem to be, at least they're not going to make a change. I know it's Texas. Who knows? Maybe they pull out the grenade right now. But Sonny Dykes overall, just in terms of stature, he's definitely going up. Down right now are the Milwaukee Bucks. And yes, I know they beat the Wizards last night. So what's all this drama thing? Bill Simmons talked about it, and that's gotten a lot of pub. But, of course, he was like, there's something going on, stories he's heard. But if Simmons says that, he's heard something, but he was vague about it, and that was it. Paul Henning suspects it has to do with Chris Middleton. Injury contract coming up. There's something going on there.
Yeah.
That's his take. I've seen a little bit more that it might be Middleton. But there's something chemistry-wise going on with the Bucks right now, which might also explain why they've been a little bit of their rockiness of late. I wonder if Chris Middleton is...
I am nervous about Chris Middleton's health.
Yeah.
I mean, he can't shake that knee injury for whatever reason.
Well, and was it Paul Henning or was it someone that replied to Henning said, I think it was Henning that said, Is this a Scottie Pippen situation going on here?
Oh, that's a good example.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Just keep that on your radar.
If you don't know, watch The Last Dance.
Yeah.
Then you'll get a little update on that. So interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Hey, by the way, your 2 years of Showdown?
Yeah, what? What are they?
1972 and Weird, 1983. So there you go.
Whoa.
How that worked out, right?
Okay.
So we'll do that coming up after these quick news updates. All right, third and final hour, kicking off on this Making the Turn Wednesday. Appreciate y'all tuning in, however, and wherever you may be tuning in. Before we get to a little showdown here, don't forget you can text us your picks for who is the most boring athlete yet. I mean, great athlete, great sports figure, but they were just boring. And we're talking about like play on the field or on the courts or whatever have you. So Tim Duncan's a big one. Tony Gwynn has been a big one so far out there. So you can text those babies on over if you want. Let's do a little good vibes before we do the showdown here this morning. All right, so our good vibes. Now I'm gonna preface it, this way a little bit. Monday, we all know what happened Monday night with that game, right? Did you watch it in person, by the way, Luke? Did you see it?
I saw the notifications coming up. I did look to see the video to see what was going on.
Right.
But I didn't watch it as it happened.
Right. So if anybody's wondering if there's any updates, his uncle actually told the NFL Network last night that he is receiving 50% oxygen after initially requiring a feed of 100% oxygen. There is concern that Damar Hamlin sustained lung damage, but they're going to try. I guess I saw one thing too that they're going to try to get him off the oxygen and try to get him to breathe on his own today, possibly.
Mm-hmm.
But they had to resuscitate him twice. They said they resuscitated him on the field before they brought him to the hospital, and then they had to resuscitate him a second time when they got to the hospital. That's scary right there. But this is an awful, awful, awful story. But I think where I'm going with this, with the vibes one, has been, everybody's kind of followed along with his with the GoFundMe page for his campaign of raising money for toys.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure you've heard about that.
Yeah.
Like originally it was at which kind of probably like $2,500. That was the initial goal of raising, was $2,500. As of yesterday, as of last night, it has now received more than $5 million right now.
Wow.
And you've had people like Tom Brady, Josh McDaniels, other athletes and coaches and that contributing on there as well. But it has received over $5 million. And I guarantee you it's probably going to continue to go up, right? It's probably going to continue to go up at that point. So,
wow.
Yeah, it's been a huge, huge jump there too. But I mean, I don't even know what to say in a situation like that. What we witnessed on Monday night, you know what I mean? Like that is, I can't even imagine, being a teammate or anything like that and seeing that, like seeing your teammate having to have CPR.
That's
right?
the thing. It's tough to relate, especially if you're not in a team situation, and I guess even more so to be more nuanced late in the season when you've spent a whole season together, kind of in the bubble of your team, and then that happens. It's tougher for us to relate when we're watching it. I mean, I'm sure a lot of us, when we initially saw it, are like, whoa, he just went down with is it like a leg or something like that? And we can't relate as much as they do.
Yeah.
And I guess if anyone in real time, I didn't see this because, again, I was seeing the reactions afterwards as I'm looking on Twitter, like 40 minutes later, like, what? And rewinding through the timeline and seeing how it was all coming on in real time. I'm sure there were some that were like, and I didn't see any of this, but I'm sure there's some like, really, they're not going to play the game? Well, there is a difference between removed fan and player on the field. There's a reason why this game is not being rescheduled. I mean, now we're getting to the point where competitively it wouldn't work with squeezing it in before week 18, but you just couldn't. No, the players are no shape to do that when they've seen one of their own possibly die in front of them.
Right.
And just because, this has happened before. What, 1971?
Yeah.
Oh, we're supposed to relate to that somehow? No. It's, you hope it never happens again.
Right.
And it probably will. I don't know when. Maybe it's another 50 years. but you hope it doesn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
And whatever lessons can be learned, I mean, maybe it's a fluke, maybe it's just the hit and something about his body and something like this, the physiology, something like that, and it's a one-time circumstance.
Yeah, and I know they talked about, was it I'm blanking on what they call it, but it's like that perfect hit at the perfect time of the heart wave and the electric impulses.
Exactly, yeah. Is there something that can be learned from that? Is there anything that, like we're kind of implying, is there anything that needs to be learned, or is it one of those like there can be fluky things that happen? There are accidents, and it just you go forward. I hate to say it, but you kind of do, because there's really nothing you can do about it, and maybe that was it. But we'll analyze it.
Yeah,
we'll find out and hopefully make it all better, whatever the situation is, and especially for him, and just keep hoping and praying and whatnot that he gets better and Hamlin is able to live a life.
Yeah, that's the most important thing. And I know like people are talking about trying to figure out, well, how does this factor playoff? And that I get why people are talking about it. I understand it.
It'll get done.
It probably won't be the solution that everybody likes, right? It's just a tough situation.
Yeah.
Whatever they decide, if it's not going to be a game, it's not going to be made up or whatever. Yes, it'll affect playoff seedings, but you know what? I think a person's life is the most important thing in this whole thing. Yeah. And really, there is no right or wrong answer in this whole thing, like how to try to figure it out.
Yeah. And I mean, at its core, to look at on the field, if you're good enough, you will find a way to win, regardless of where you have to play. If this screws up a seeding and now you got to go on the road, well, are you a good enough team to win on the road? Teams do win on the road.
Drink. I was listening to Peter King yesterday.
Thanks.
Because he does a Tuesday spot with Chris Russo, Mad Dog, and they were talking about it, and and Peter made the point too. He's like, the NFL might have kind of inadvertently already set protocol for something like this, going back to their COVID, years where, all right, there might be teams that only play 13 games. There might be teams that could play the full 16 at that point in time. It was 16 games. And that they might have inadvertently set that protocol already.
Yeah.
It's.
Would you give them a tie? I mean, they didn't really. I mean, maybe you do, but maybe not.
Mm-hmm. And as he pointed out too, since you were talking about that, he's like, the home field thing. If you look back at the last few years, that hasn't been the biggest factor in determining, who goes to the Super Bowl or who advances and all that.
I know that, the big thing is Buffalo and Kansas City. That's what everyone's thinking about, because the Bills have to go back to Kansas City for another AFC Championship game. Well, maybe they do, but other teams have gone into Kansas City and defeated them. Patriots
Buffalo did this year.
Yes, and it happens. I know Kansas City has one of the best home field advantages in the NFL. But teams have gotten through there in the playoffs very lately. The defending AFC champions got through there very lately. It can happen.
Yeah.
It just, I guess it sucks.
I think the biggest thing I was thinking of is financially, locally for those teams and businesses, if they lose a home game or something like that.
And if that's the case, then you know what? There's enough money you can compensate them. Think of it like insurance.
Yeah.
It's essentially that sort of situation. There are ways to get around all of that. To say nothing, by the way, of fantasy football right now. Does that seem even more ridiculous? Can you imagine how many people were because for a lot of folks, that was championship night. On a personal level, I came this close doing the whole this close one word thing to having to go through the Bengals game to find out if I was going to win the championship in the Volume 1 league. Side note, won it anyway.
Well, I remember your team, and you should have.
Yep, 3 out of 4 now. However, I had the Bills defense all season long. Looking at my matchup, I was trailing in the projected points, and I'm looking around. What can I move? What can I move? Most players you really can't at this point.
Please tell me you picked up Green Bay. That would have been awesome.
I did not pick up the Packer defense, yes, that would. I should go back and see what the points are on that. It would have been a good choice. But I actually chose a pretty decent other one because I knew the Bills, their defense hasn't been as good as advertised, but it's getting steadily worse, I think, as the season's been going along. So I quick subbed them out for the Giants.
Oh, okay.
For just the first time outside of the bye week, of course, you need to do something different there.
Right.
But this time I dropped the Bills defense. I put in the Giants defense. Well, that turned out to be a pretty good move as well. But the end result was both myself and my opponent had no players or units in Monday Night Football. So we wrapped it up on Sunday night. But if I don't make that move, and that would have been enough because it was a very close result, I would have been a few points behind And then there's that whole point of, well, who wins? And it doesn't matter at all. It's bleeping fantasy football.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like another step removed from that. But there are plenty of people. I know there are a lot of folks. I've been seeing them on Facebook, like going into the game. You hear nothing afterwards, of course.
Right.
And I think most people get it. There's probably some folks that are like, well, no, what? Okay, whatever. Most people get it, though.
Yeah. Yep.
This is real life, and we get it. And, well, once again, this is all entertainment.
Right.
Unless you're playing, unless you're employed, this is all entertainment.
Mm-hmm. All right. Tell you what, let's take our break, and then we'll get into Showdown. That way we don't make this a really long.
We'll go on to like 8:50.
Exactly.
Because I think 72 and 83 might take some discerning.
Ooh, all right.
There's some good years of pop culture.
Oh, okay. Interesting. Yeah. Little tease.
There's some good ones.
I like it. All right. Quick break. We'll be back after these words. Got some more picks for the most boring athlete, yet really, really good athlete. We're talking about kind of like the performance on the field, more for Duncan on there. Again, if you have the nickname Big Fundamental, you're probably pretty boring, but probably pretty good too. So I was trying to think of like an old school center who all he did was just like back it down and then lay it in. Dribble it down, back the guy down, lay it in.
I mean, it's
trying to think of an old school center who just did that the whole time.
Like you're like a Russell or a Mikan or someone like that.
I mean, Kareem with the skyhook was pretty boring. I'll just say, there was oh no, never mind. I'll get off on a tangent. We won't have time. So
he wasn't boring an airplane.
That's here you go. All right, you ready for showdown? All right, so the years that we've got up here, 1972 versus 1983. Now, 72 for sports, we got to do the little caveat to this whole thing, right? Because the Super Bowl champion was the Cowboys, but yet we know the 72 Dolphins for their undefeated season.
So it's undefeated season Dolphins stands out.
Mm-hmm.
Also, what just happened that we marked its 50th anniversary?
The Immaculate Reception.
December 23rd, as a lot of us know.
Yeah. Yep. So got that. We had Nebraska dominating Alabama to win the College National Championship, Orange Bowl, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
So, what baseball? The Senators moved to Texas to become the Rangers. The Washington Senators moved to Dallas-Fort Worth to become the Texas Rangers.
A's defeat the Reds in a 7-game series, the beginning of that dynasty of the A's, the 3 straight.
Mm-hmm. Had a pretty good Hall of Fame for baseball that year. Sandy Koufax, Yogi Berra, an early win.
Mm-hmm.
Not bad. What else do we got?
We lost Roberto Clemente right at the end of the year.
That's right. Yep. That was that was a New Year's Eve anniversary about that too.
Mm-hmm.
UCLA won in Division I men's basketball over Florida State. The Lakers beat the Knicks 4-1. ABA finals, we want to throw that out there. Indiana Pacers defeated the Nets 4-2.
It's a Pacers championship.
Yeah. Do they have that up in their?
I don't know. Like I would say they'd be allowed to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Again, if you win your league, then that's a championship. I mean, you don't necessarily want to say it's the same as the NBA because it was split, but it's championship. So I would hope they have it up there.
Yeah. 72 for golf. How about this trio? Jack won 2 of them, Masters of the U.S. Open. Lee Trevino won the British, and then Gary Player won the PGA Championship. Iconic golfer there.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty top heavy.
Oh, and by the way, I just looked. Yes, the Pacers do have ABA championship banners in the field house.
Good to know.
Yes.
What else do we got on here that we want to? Billie Jean King won the French and Wimbledon and U.S. Open that year. She dominated.
Bruins won the Stanley Cup. The Olympics were that year.
72, yeah. In Munich?
Yeah. There was a lot that happened at that one. That was a very memorable one for good and bad reasons, obviously. Mm-hmm. Mark Spitz was one of the prominent good ones. I think it was the year of Olga Kolb. Was that Olga Kolbert's year? I'm trying to remember. Of course, everyone was the hostage situation as well. That's a lot of 72 there. Boxing.
Was that, really quick, that was the 72 Olympics? I don't know if you watched this. Did you ever watch the documentary on Netflix from a few months ago, the Redemption Team or whatever, the Olympic team with LeBron and Kobe?
I did not watch that.
That was because Doug Collins was on there talking about his 72 Olympic experience. Do you remember that game for the gold?
Yeah, like
between them and Russia, like the U.S. thought they got it, but then they put extra time on the clock.
The 72 one. Yeah, there was the classic one I remember was back in 1992 during the NBC summer coverage of the Barcelona Olympics. They did a couple mini docs during like prime time. One was on the hostage thing. Another was on that. And they were actually well done on both. It was that's how I first really learned about both of them. And it's that as far as the basketball one goes, obviously way less significant considering. Yeah. It was completely outrageous. There was a podcast on that too that I recently listened to.
Yeah, because the men's team didn't accept their silver medals.
Yeah. And they still won't.
Nope.
I think there's like I said, there's a podcast, and I'm trying to remember who hosted it, but it was out. It was out like about a year ago.
Yeah.
But it was about the 72 games. And it interviewed a lot of the people involved.
Yeah.
And they won't do it.
Yeah, because I remember I was watching that doc, and Coach K, because he was coaching that team, actually brought Doug Collins in to talk about that experience with that team.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and then, yeah, it was just, I'm like, oh, wow, I kind of forgot about that. But,
it was a very big deal. I mean, it's the sort of thing that would have, quote unquote, broken the internet if it happens today.
Yeah.
But it was a big deal even at the time. But considering, again, what all was happening in those 2 weeks in Munich, my gosh, there was enough else going on. Yes, it was Olga Korb, that, as we would nowadays say, blew up.
Mm-hmm.
Female Athlete of the Year, as well from the AP. Mark Spitz was the Male Athlete of the Year.
Okay, so 83. Should we move to 83 now?
Let's do it.
So Super Bowl was Washington over Miami. John Riggins was your game MVP. We just did this anniversary the other day. Tony Dorsett set that. I just saw the play.
99 and a half.
Yeah, I just saw the play. I don't know why it popped up on my Facebook, but the Cowboys only had 10 players on offense for that play too.
I know, and they broke through.
Yeah.
That was right after another Metrodome roof tear, like a few days after that.
Man. We had there were a couple of football coaching deaths this year. Paul Bryant and George Halas.
Mm-hmm.
Penn State beat Georgia to win the national championship.
I think actually that Alabama just beat Illinois. Speaking of, again, Tony Eason, I think it was like not long after that, because I remember watching that game on ESPN Classic back in the 2000s and seeing him going off the field. And then, of course, a few weeks later, so the USFL began that year.
Yeah. Well, we just kind of went through that stuff. So.
Yes. George Halas was the one I'm sure you were getting to. Was the other passing. That was the year of one of the most memorable Packer games outside of their championship era. The Monday Night Football game, 48-47.
Yep. Highest scoring one. Yep.
Absolutely memorable game. That's I know at least one person who was at that game. Photographer friend Tim was at that game that night. There was a fair amount good there. Baseball wise, the Pine Tar incident was that year.
Oh boy.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yep. We all know that one.
Yep.
Orioles got the World Series, the one title for Cal Ripken.
That's right. And it was early in his career.
Weird to say, but yeah, that was his only.
Hey, at least he's not on the list of best to not have one. So
he got it out of the way really early.
Mm-hmm.
Brewers had a good year that year. I mean, they would have been in the playoffs if we had like the modern era of seeding and it wasn't just division champions. But they were pretty good that year, of course, coming off of 82. They weren't that good in 72, but they were good in 83.
Mm-hmm.
Oh boy, NCAA men's basketball championship, all timer.
Oh, the North Carolina State Houston one. Yes. Ooh, this is getting a little tougher.
Wittenberg.
Now.
Yep. And Jimmy V. Yep. That was an absolute classic of a game.
We can all picture it in our heads right now.
Yep. That was a great one. See, 76ers
over the Lakers.
Yep. That was the Moses Malone faux year. You remember that?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, which didn't quite get it because of which team kept him from going 4-4-4.
It was oh crap! I just had it.
That would be Wisconsin's claim to fame that year. Milwaukee Bucks. Yep. They got to was one of their 3 conference championship appearances that decade, and they did win a game. One game. They won a game. I think it was one game, but they did beat the 76ers that year. That was a really good Sixers team.
There was something I was going to bring up on here too, and I just where'd it go? Oh, man, I lost it. But
Seve Ballesteros won the Masters.
Oh, I was just going to say Islanders swept Edmonton in NHL, and that was when Wayne Gretzky had a fantastic year too.
He was really good. That was the 4th of 4 straight Islanders championships.
Mm-hmm.
Tennis. Hey, Joakim Noah's dad won the French Open. Yannick Noah.
Yeah.
McEnroe won Wimbledon. Martina Navratilova. Side note. I know they caught the cancers early, but still, hope all goes well. 3 of the 4 that year.
Yeah.
Only the French. Again, that pesky French Open is always the one that someone doesn't win.
Unless you're Rafael Nadal.
and then that's like the one you always win and not so much the other ones.
Right.
It's kind of funny how that works. Oh, boy, that's a pretty hefty year.
It is. I think I still lean towards 72.
See, I'm going 80. Oh, boy. Like the Olympic. Now, of course, 72. This sometimes happens. You have the Olympics in one year and no Olympics in the other. But still, assess. You can make up for it in other regards. I mean, I'm kind
83's got the iconic moment for me with college hoops. But I look at depth-wise. I look at depth-wise for 72.
Oh, boy. Yeah, this is tough.
Should we come back to this
Yes, I want to punt to do it, but I want to come back to it.
Okay. So do you want to do music then? Or?
Yes.
Okay,
let's
go for it.
Oh, boy. 72 album-wise. Exile on Main Street from the Rolling Stones. Rise and Fall of Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars from Bowie. Talking Book from Stevie Wonder. Harvest from Neil Young. Came out that year. Honky Chateau from Elton John. Can't Buy a Thrill from Steely Dan. Eat a Peach from the Allman Brothers Band. Superfly from Curtis Mayfield all came out that year. A lot of good albums. Song-wise, among the bigger hits of the year. Now, American Pie came out in 71. It went to number 1 in 72. Without You was a number 1 hit that year. Lean on Me was a number 1 hit that year. Let's Stay Together from Al Green was a big hit that year. And then there's some oddities as you get further down. Layla was a big hit that year. Over to 83, and I was recently talking about this with Alex Edwards from our sister station, Wax, and I was wondering if 83, 84, if that time period maybe goes down as a more memorable period, like underrated years in music because of all the stuff that came out that year. Now, granted, some of the biggest albums of the year had come out just before, like Thriller was an 82 album. But in 83, you got Synchronicity from The Police, Kill 'Em All from Metallica, Murmur, REM's debut came out that year, Pyromania was out that year, The Hurting from Tears for Fears, Madonna's debut album came out that year, Violent Femmes, Shout of the Devil comes out that year, Can't Slow Down, War from U2. So the bigger songs of the year. Every Breath You Take, Flashdance, Total Eclipse of the Heart, Maniacs, Sweet Dreams Are Made of This, among the bigger ones of the year. The music videos, I wonder how much that pushes 83 up. And again, 72, there's a handful of artists doing videos. That really wasn't a thing. But 83, you had Billie Jean, Beat It, and Thriller.
Ooh. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, the songs came out in 82, but the videos were all done in 83. Like, that's, again, we're talking icons. We're talking Mount Rushmore. We're talking pop culture changes if they don't exist. Prince breaks it big that year. Like I said, Madonna comes out that year. I'm leaning, okay, there's a bit of nostalgia bias because that's like right in my wheelhouse. I'm kind of leaning 83. I think that's
my vote. So.
I think it's a more significant year, even if maybe some of the albums are a little bit better in 72, and there's some really good 72 songs. I think pop culture is more influenced by 83. Plus, I think today there's a certain undercurrent of the current pop music sound that comes from the 83, 84 era. Mm-hmm. Think of like The Weeknd and stuff like that. You can totally picture a lot of that being like Corey Hart.
Oh yeah,
stuff in that realm. It's so influential to this day, and it's beyond the whole 20-year cycle. So I'm going to say 83, not by much.
Okay.
But yeah.
Well, maybe movies are going to decide this for us. 72, very top heavy with number 1, The Godfather.
Oh, my gosh.
I will, again, admit I have not seen the full movie.
But it might be you could argue it's the best movie of all time.
Ooh.
You could argue it's number 1.
Deliverance is 2. the Poseidon Adventures on there too. You got Last Tango in Paris.
Butter anybody?
Yeah. Jeremiah Johnson was not a bullfrog. Sorry.
That was Superfly.
That was really bad.
Yeah.
Again, kind of like these early movies, if you start to get way down, you're getting into some weedy ones here for some titles. Tales of the Crypt was a movie. I figured that more of the TV show. The Way of the Dragon, Bruce Lee. Chuck Norris. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But if we kind of joke about this, but I don't know how far you've kind of gone down it, but yeah.
It starts to get very mid-70s.
Yeah.
That is a very clean way of putting it.
Yep.
Also,
exactly.
Ben that year. What the heck is this movie? Schoolgirl Report Part 3, What Parents Find Unthinkable? What?
Well, there's a movie called The Stepmother. As part of a blackmail plot, a woman is forced to seduce her new husband's son. So, yeah. There you go. Yeah.
Lady Sings the Blues was that year in a movie that has none of those implications.
Conquest of the Planet of the Apes.
Also a movie that has none of those implications. Nope. It's sad when you have to go through the list and be like, in non-porn movies from 1972 that were...
Hey, 1776 was on here. If anybody watches Boy Meets World, Mr. Feeney's in that movie.
Ooh, cool.
Didn't know if you know that or not, but yeah.
I did not, but good to know.
Mr. Feeney's in there. By the way, side note, Mr. Feeney, his real-life wife from Wisconsin Rapids.
Really?
Boom. There's your useless knowledge of the day.
Wow.
And they're both alive. So
could potentially be listening right now if they got a really good signal.
Never know.
Shout out.
Nope.
I don't know if they're listening. I don't
know if they're in Rapids or not. So.
Probably not, but if they were, maybe they're visiting people. I don't know.
1983. Christmas Story, which everybody probably just got done watching except me because I don't like that movie.
Okay, so you're not I'm okay with it. I didn't watch it until 7-8 years ago.
I think the reason I'm not a big fan of it is because it got overplayed.
See, that's the thing. Like to a degree, again, here comes the hype thing. Like if something gets really hyped and you're not already into it, then you become anti without even real. But you did watch it, right?
Yeah, I watched it. I maybe you know what? Maybe I need to watch it as an adult because when I was younger growing up, I mean the 24 hours that it played on, it's like okay, enough. But maybe I need to rewatch it.
Is it a movie that became a tradition because it became a tradition?
Yeah, I think so.
I mean, I'm not really knocking the movie, but I don't know because that new one, I thought it was going to be a bigger deal, and it wasn't.
Yeah.
I don't know.
National Lampoon's Vacation, Trading Places, Dan Aykroyd, Eddie Murphy, The Outsiders. Yep. We watched that one in school after we read the book. Scarface.
Say hello, my little friend.
Star Wars, Return
of the Jedi.
Risky Business, Tom Cruise. Flashdance.
War Games, Testament. We're in the nuclear war era of movies.
Superman 3.
Private School with my 80s era crush, Phoebe Cates. There are 2 Bond movies
Cujo.
in 83. Yeah, Never Say Never Again, the unofficial Bond movie, and Octopussy, the actual Bond movie from 83. Yeah, Cujo, you said. The Big Chill, Staying Alive.
The great Jaws 3D. Eye roll. Anyway, Psycho 2.
I always remember Mr. Mom because when I would check out video cassettes in the late 80s, early 90s.
Michael Keaton.
Yes. And that was, if you remember, when you would check out VHSs, there'd be a trailer. And I know they did with DVDs too, but there'd always be a trailer for some other movie. And it seemed like Mr. Mom was the trailer before every movie I would check out from Randall's in the late 80s or early 90s.
Nice.
Never seen the movie, but it was always there oh, okay. Here it is again. Terry Garr, Michael Keaton. Woo.
Michael Keaton.
Valley Girl, a young Nicolas Cage.
Well, do you want to know one of my favorite movie lines is actually from Mr. Mom.
What is it?
I'll play it for you. Yeah.
That sounds like it might be appropriate for some Monday morning.
Yes. Exactly.
Yes, that might need to be a hotkey.
Ooh, yeah.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Terms of Endearment, The Right Stuff. Wow. Twilight Zone, the movie.
So I got my pick, but
Yentl. Sorry. So what do you? And there's actually more too. The further down you got.
That's why I say 72 has got Godfather on the top, but 83's got more depth.
It does.
So I'm going 83.
Yeah, I have to.
So our sports one doesn't matter anymore. So 83 won.
I think 83 wins. Yep.
Yep.
I think even if I were to switch 72 on the songs, 83 has enough of a difference. They're so narrow, but 83 is a little more one-sided in the movies than 72 would be in the other ones. That if you're doing a point total, which we're just totally making up, of course, 83 advances.
Yep. Yep, I agree. So there you go. We're starting to wind down here, I think.
Wow.
We got to get into the 60s. We gotta hammer those out.
The
because
60s and the 2000s still need some.
Yeah, because I think I'm just really quickly glancing over my chicken scratch here. We've only done 2 years in the 60s, 65 and 66. And then 2000s, we have only done 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We've done 6.
Is this one of these where random.org doesn't quite give you a certain area?
Yeah, well, I can type in the area, then I can minimize it to 2 years, but they keep giving me like the same 2 years. Or, like, 71 versus 2005, already did that. 65 versus 2009, already did those years, so.
Yeah.
I'll have to kind of break it down a little bit further that way. So.
I can't wait for a T-Pain Doors matchup.
Yes.
Oh, boy.
We should really have Marty Green in for that one. So,
gosh, Marty Green and Bob Boesel can just like.
Yep, exactly. So,
yeah.
All right, we gotta take a break here, then we'll regroup, get back on track here. So, all right, 83 moves on, in our Wednesday showdown. We'll get a couple more years next week. We'll be back after these words. play this one on Grace Hits? You play that one on Grace Hits? Luke? Dang it. I'm really upset that they did that over my song.
It sounded really good. One bourbon. For a moment, I'm like, dude, well, did I know that song, but I'm pretty sure George Thorogood doesn't swear at that point. So
Yeah.
Yeah. So one
Thanks.
One Scotch.
I was asking, do you play that one on Grace Hits?
Not play that one. It's a solid song. We play Bad to the Bone. I mean,
yeah.
I did see George Thorogood live in concert about 5 years ago.
Really?
Yeah, he was over in the Twin Cities. My best friend going back to elementary school somehow ended up with tickets. Like, you want to go to a George Thorogood show? I'm like, why not? So went and watched him, and he was still Bad to the Bone.
Did you play that song?
That one, I Drink Alone. I mean, all the classics. Hey, it was good.
That's a 8-minute song?
Yeah.
Almost 9-minute song, I think.
Yes. Oh. He's a solid blues guitarist. And good to, I mean, yeah, he's a great.
Yes, definitely. Well, whenever time you kind of mention Scotch or bourbon, I think of that song. So
yeah. I think I usually will end up thinking of I Drink Alone. I don't know why, but it's all the references in that one and the creative wordplay. And again, I know it's not his song, but still it's the wordplay on all of that and the way he sells it. Oh wait, did he do that? I should double check before I go all out. He strike that. He wrote it. Yeah. Okay. Because he did enough covers and he's so good with the covers. No, he wrote it. So that's even better.
Nice.
Dang.
I like it.
And again, I'm talking I Drink Alone. I'm even one bourbon, one scotch, one beer.
It's
ironic for me. Like I can't stand the stuff, but he's so good with the writing of that. It's so good.
Oh, well, I had quite a few the other day, so yeah.
Yeah, okay.
We'll just leave it there. So yeah, all right. Good stuff. Hopefully we'll have a Victory Scotch Monday morning. I like your idea. I might have to make that a hotkey for Mr. Mom, though.
I think it works.
Yeah.
I do think it
Play it at 7 o'clock every morning. That might be the thing. Our 7 o'clock wait. Yeah.
Oh boy.
Nope. Maybe every Friday or something like that.
Yeah.
Or Monday and Friday.
Yeah. Drinking your way into work. Yay.
Hey, when you're working from home, though, it doesn't matter.
That's
right?
true. That's true. Just get the job done and do it well. However you do it.
I know you won't be on, so I'm going to ask you your picks for your postseason picks, your predictions. Like, who do you think's going to the postseason?
Ooh.
So I'm assuming, I think they're still going to play the games this weekend.
I would imagine so.
Because, I mean, you got Saturday games. I think they would have probably made a decision by now.
Yeah.
I would think. Unless something, who knows? But I would assume that week 18 is on as scheduled.
I think it will be.
So we got two games on Saturday: Kansas City versus the Raiders, and then of course the battle for the AFC South, the vaunted Jacksonville Jaguars and the Tennessee Titans. Only one. Well, actually, Jacksonville could kind of sneak in, but they would need help. But anyways, let's start off with that. Well, just give me. Do you think Jacksonville wins and gets in? Derrick Henry is going to play.
Yeah.
Practice, but they're going with Joshua Dobbs at quarterback again.
I don't like Tennessee's quarterback situation. I'm going to go Jacksonville.
How about that? I think, me personally, Doug Peterson needs to be talked about more about Coach of the Year. I know it couldn't get any worse from last year, but still, to do that in a year, to what poo-poo platters they had last year, and to get into the postseason this year, Doug Peterson has done a fantastic job.
Yeah, I'll say Jags. So they win the division and lock themselves into the Saturday, January 14th, 3:25 p.m. or whatever time start time. Can they play that game in Houston just to keep the tradition alive?
Well, okay, here's the question, though. Is it still the Saturday afternoon? Brandon and I were discussing this a couple weeks ago. Is it still the Saturday afternoon, or is that now the Monday night game?
It's a good question.
Because last year's Monday night game was poo-poo too.
That's right.
It was Rams-Cardinals.
By the way, the poo-poo platter was pretty good. Those that know from Woo's Pagoda, it was solid. So no knock on Woo's Pagoda's poo-poo platter, but it's still, that's the that's a good question. See, I would think you'd want to put a high-profile game on Monday night. On the other hand, and I remember again, Peter King, drink again. Sorry for those that are actually drinking scotch this morning, have to drink.
Jealous.
A, that, B, you're going to be screwed at 1 o'clock this afternoon. So I hope you're getting your work done early.
Hey, they might be third shift. You never know.
Depends on your timing. That's true. Maybe you're all done. He was talking about how the NFL was trying to figure out where do you put the high-profile games with the new scheduling as of last year. And I think the thought was because of Monday night, the potential short week, that you put, again, kind of the lesser-ish matchup in terms of seeding as well there. I know you're trying to get visibility, but you don't want to mess with too much ratings visibility and also competitive balance, which is the ultimate point here. Like Jaguars, Lamarless Ravens would, I guess, kind of make sense if that ends up being the matchup, which it may not be for Monday night. But again, Saturday afternoon is also kind of are we conditioned to think that Saturday afternoon first round playoffs are the bad playoff game?
Yes.
Is the bad playoff game?
Yes.
So shouldn't that be that?
It should be. Last year it was the Raiders and Bengals game, which actually was very good.
Right. Well, and that's the thing. You don't necessarily know, but at least in terms of who's being put into the, that was the infamous
Drew Brees game.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So I don't know. I think it could go either way on this one, but it's going to be one or the other. It's Monday night or Saturday afternoon for the Jaguars.
So who gets, well, first I'll ask this, in your opinion, that's the thing with the tricky thing here too. So if that game between Buffalo and Bengals just kind of scraps it, that gives the Bengals a division too. That's the other part in this whole thing. Because if the Bengals would have lost to Buffalo, then we would have had an AFC Championship game.
Right.
This weekend. So we know Baltimore's in, Chargers are in. The only thing is if like Baltimore were to beat the Bengals, they could possibly, right? No, that's pretty much locked in then. Yeah. So, okay. How about, do you think Pittsburgh gets in? Do you think Dolphins?
Pittsburgh needs the Dolphins and the Patriots
to lose.
I can definitely I guess we have to predict this way. I would have picked the Bills regardless. At this point, I don't want to be the team playing the Bills. It's just, let's be real. The Bills are going to win, the Patriots lose. So the question for the Steelers' sake is, do the Dolphins lose to the Jets at home? Dolphins are really trending down of late, but the Jets aren't exactly lighting up the world at this point. I think the Skylar Thompson versus maybe a not as great Mike White.
Yeah.
Boy.
In Miami.
It is. I think Miami holds on.
Okay.
So I think the Dolphins get in the playoffs because, it's basically Miami or New England or Pittsburgh. And so it doesn't matter what the Steelers do. And the Steelers are hosting the Browns. And the Steelers, I would predict, even with I think the Steelers beat the Browns. But, I think Miami ends up getting the spot. I would not be shocked, though, if because of the Dolphins' weakness at quarterback, if somehow the Jets pull it off, if their defense can rally just enough and Mike White has an okay enough game, that I could see the Jets winning, because I feel fairly confident in the Steelers, but I'm barely going to pick the Dolphins.
So, and I'm going to point this out. If it is Steelers that win and say Kansas City gets the 1, you have Pittsburgh visiting Buffalo.
Oh boy.
And if with a little bit the last couple days with Hamlin and going out, he graduated from Pitt.
Oh my gosh.
Mike Tomlin has known him since he was 12 years old. He talked about him a lot yesterday. You want to talk emotions in a game?
Oh gosh.
That would be that.
Wow.
So
wow.
Right?
Oh,
Kenny
boy.
Pickett, teammate at Pitt too with him.
Oh
so
gosh.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Yeah. So, who do you think gets the 1 seed in Philly? Or okay, did I just give it away? In the NFC,
the Cowboys.
Please tell me you're serious.
No.
Okay.
That would be funny to pull that up. I know Philadelphia doesn't look great of late. I mean, beyond just Jalen Hurts, I don't know what's going on there. But Philadelphia, they're 14-point favorites. That line's too high. I'm sorry. I know the Giants might rest players. There's a bit of a whole, well, hey, but what happened 15 years ago thing. But that's a different coach, different circumstances. I think Philadelphia wins. They get the 1 seed.
I agree. Who gets the 2?
Niners.
They're
already into that position. They're hosting Arizona.
Cardinals,
yeah. Vikings are the 3, then Tampa Bay's the 4.
Dallas will be 5.
Right. So
Giants
will be the 6. And so
who
then
do you
it's, the Packers will get it.
Okay.
So I think we're going to have a Packers-49ers matchup in round 1.
Hey, it's Brock Purdy. He's got to come down at some point. Just save it for the playoff game, Brock. Not against Arizona. Just save it. Save it. Save it for the wild card.
Okay.
Got to cool down at some point, Brock. Got to do it. You look at some of these teams. We were just talking, like, my stock down was these quarterbacks, and, like, Washington can't find a quarterback. The Colts can't find a quarterback. You got the freaking 49ers who sell the franchise. They get Trey Lance. He plays, a handful of games, a couple of games. They got Jimmy Garoppolo back. He gets hurt. And then Mr. Irrelevant is leading them to the postseason. 49ers know what they're doing, for crying out loud. It's part of it's the coach, though, too. But
how excited are you about the prospect of, let's see if this all works out right. So let's say the Packers upset the 49ers, because that would be an upset. Short of like Bosa and Birdie and everyone McCaffrey all getting injured this week.
Yep. And they go to Philly.
They would go to Philly. Let's say Philly really is off, even with Hurts. Let's say their hot part is done and they move on to the NFC Championship game. And let's say Tom Brady actually found something and the Cowboys cowboy, and they advance. The Buccaneers then defeat either Minnesota or the Giants, which is a possibility. And then you would have Green Bay at Tampa Bay for the NFC Championship game.
I'd feel good about that. I'd feel confident about that.
But it's Tom Brady in the playoffs, and you never know.
I don't care. I refuse to believe it. So
I actually think the Packers would have a pretty good shot in that game.
The one I probably don't want, because I'd be nervous as all get out, is Packers-Cowboys NFC Championship. Because I'll be tired of the whole talk the whole week.
Oh, gosh. Is it any more?
And I've got nothing against Mike McCarthy. It's just,
I can't believe we're actually to the point of saying this, and we say this on the 20-year anniversary of the Vic game and the one that ended the Lambeau playoff mystique. Do you have more confidence in the Packers going through the playoffs knowing that they don't have to play a game at Lambeau Field? I'm going there.
Yeah,
yes.
I know. And I think a lot of people actually would agree with you, especially after the last couple of years. I don't think I would necessarily say more confident, but I don't know. That's a tough one. Like, I wouldn't necessarily say most confident, but I think there's something. I saw somebody, and I got to wrap this up really quick. I did see somebody make the point of lower seeded teams, like these 6, 7, 5s, they play looser in the playoffs because they got nothing to lose. Whereas these higher seeds may be playing it a little bit safe,
Mm-hmm.
And I think you can make the case that was Green Bay.
I think the Packers are really loose. I mean, my gosh, if there was ever a good time to be the Packers, this is it.
Right. And you come in as a 7 seed with nothing to lose, let it fly, man. I think there's more to that than the whole home road sort of thing, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So I think you make the case. They were playing it maybe a little tight, a little safe the last year and against Tampa in the NFC Championship.
The Packers are a dangerous team if they get in there.
Don't overlook Detroit. Don't do it.
Fighting Campbells.
Yep. All right. Have a good Wednesday, everybody. DP and Dan, they're up next.